Hi guys, how are you all? This is FJ What If? Today we are going to discuss about what if Naruto was Madara's student part 19. Before start the episode, please like and subscribe my channel. Chapter 19. Nature of the Beast. In the sacred land of the wolves. A place forbidden to anyone but their chosen champions. A beautiful place home to a wondrous people, but yet the most savage at the same time. A place serene and dangerous, calm and violent at its core, its name, a mere lie hiding the brutality of its people, the dog's howls mirroring the blowing of the wind as the colorful leaves of the trees danced in the air like a spectacular show, almost as if they had life in them, the waters rushing through streams and over cliffs drumming against the ground like a chorus, the land, as if painted, was beautiful to anyone who was unfamiliar with the true nature of beasts. Shiranu, the ruler of the realm, the chieftain of the wolves and one of the oldest and strongest beings in the world, was lying within his palace, contemplating something that had haunted him for centuries, his own death. Blessed with eternal youth and vitality, the wolf lay there, unmoving, only stirring when something caught his interest. He was pondering his death. Sometimes, he dreamt of it, dying over and over, a cursed animal. He had thought aloud of one day killing himself, to be rid of the burden placed on him. Alas, the man that had placed the eternal seal on him would not allow for such an act. He could no more kill himself than a fish drowning in water. Because of his immense size and durability, jumping off cliffs couldn't work, and you can't suffocate yourself either. And mortals, such as shinobi, killing him would be difficult enough. He would just awaken in the same place, alive and healthy the next day when twilight arrives. Madara Uchiha attempted to kill him once, didn't quite work out as he awoke in the same place, alive, on his throne. This everlasting bane would shoulder him through the rest of his eternal life, and he would continue to curse the sage that tormented him to this day. While he may spite the one who placed him under the seal, he knew that the sins and atrocities he committed were his own doom. He would wait for the right time where he would die with this world that he lived in, waiting its final hour of twilight. The great wolf's ears then perked up upon hearing a sound emanating from the door to his palace, where he opened one of his eyes to see a small silhouette of his faithful servant. Shionin, she was a slender woman wearing a sleeveless pink kimono with long pink bell sleeves with dark red lining, a large darker shade of pink obi with two bells on her waist connected by strings, simple sandals on her feet, a mask venerating her master Shiranu, a mask in the shape of his likeness, and long white hair tied into a high ponytail and tied with red string and bells. Shiranu-sama, there's been a change to the roster, which I believe should have been brought to your attention, said his the Might Wolf servant, Shionin, standing before her ancient master. I know, I can sense my senjutsu chakra, even from here, so this little scheme of his worked after all. I'm surprised she even survived the night and my chakra. She must be strong to even not die outright from the surge of power. Perhaps it was those eyes of his, or that life force, whichever the case. I'm pleased that my blood didn't go to waste. Shonen, when she wakes, go retrieve her, and bring her before me. She must mature before she assists that mate of hers. Spoke Shiranu, to which his servant bowed, and left to retrieve their new summoner. Shiranu merely sat on his throne reminiscing about all the times his summoners accepted his blood and who refused. The time Madara underwent his partaking of the blood curse was a rather interesting time and an unforgettable moment. Flashback. The moon was high in the sky, overlooking the world it had been watching for centuries, its pale light illuminating darkness, and shining light on shades. There were few times when a person would look out and admire the beauty of the moon, and its light, engulfing the world in a serene embrace where any creature was overcome with euphoria. The moon was truly a marvel of nature that could only be enjoyed by ones who could understand its instinct. Only those who knew of its origins could understand such a leviathan. Other than that, people merely looked at it as an orb in the sky, nothing more. However, this was no time to be admiring the moon, as the forests in the land of fire were currently playing host to many torches and blazing, and the sound of marching, with banners emblazoned with a red and white fan soaring through the trees as the sounds of war drums could be heard piercing through stone, wood and flesh. It was a gathering, a call, but not a call to arms. There was no war, there was no historic battle, not even a small skirmish. No, this was something less and more, a promise. A clan, a family, was called to a mountain, a cliff whose face was topped with stone pillars leaning against each other, and where the burning torches were most prevalent. They all gathered around, watching with bated breath, and shaking arms, carrying the burning torches as their leader walking to the stone font of red liquid. They were sweating at the scene, fear and nervousness overcoming them. With sharp eyes they were watching, calculating eyes, trying to decipher what was about to unfold. They had all traveled here, under the orders of their leader, a mighty shinobi with little to no equal within the clan, a leader that had led them to many victories and just as many defeats as every other chieftain before him. They rallied behind him like a champion among veterans after he killed the previous head of the clan in legendary fashion. A man with an iron will and his hunger for battle insatiable. Very few of the clan were born like him, only before him, venerated members of this battle-hardened clan. The chieftain was a war machine, built for it, bred for it. You would always find him on the front lines, leading raids deeper and deeper into the territories of other clans, relentlessly slaughtering them in a tide of savage bloodlust. He was a passionate voice of pride and fury within the clan. When he spoke with the valor and fortitude of a true leader. He spoke in pronouncements made only in the language of swinging swords. They were a nomadic clan of dead-eyed shinobi and bellowing juggernauts who gather at the vanguard of war, raising their enemies' lands and homes to embers, then stamping those embers into ash. That was the embodiment of the strength and soul of the Uchiha clan, Madara Uchiha. Only one other amongst the gathered clan held a calm and stoic presence, without a drop of nervousness, the younger brother of the chieftain, Izuna Uchiha. The chieftain had made a deal with the wolves of the Izumi Kumamori, Spring Dream Cloud Forest, to be offered power non-thought attainable, so here Madara Uchiha was, his long black, spiky hair whipping in the wind and his blood-red armor clinking with each step, and with his massive gunbai in hand. He approached the font of blood where white mist appeared and stood before him, the servant of Shiranu, a woman garbed in a pink kimono and wear a mask, that honored her master with a simple wooden cup in hand. She then dunked the cup into the font where the red blood filled up the crevices of the cup and leaked off the side. She did this all with grace and majesty as she held the cup in both hands and presenting it to Madara, who stared at the cup with sharp red, Sharingan eyes before snatching it out of her hands, growling a little in intimidation. He then brought his gaze to the cup again and stared into the red liquid with the smell of iron, filling his nostrils. Drink. Madara. Claim your destiny. You will all be conquerors. Shiranu will make it so. Spoke the masked woman as she stared at the Uchiha chieftain, bringing the cup to his lips as he closed his eyes ready to drown the liquid down his throat, but he snapped his eyes open, at the last minute, staring ominously at the servant of Shiranu. And what Shionin must we give in return? Spoke Madara, walking around the font, his grip tightening on his gunbai and the servant's eyes, following his movements. She then gripped a portion of her mask and removed it slightly to showcase her orange-slitted eye and nothing else. Everything, she replied as she readjusted her mask where it was covering her face again. However, this did not have the intended effect, as Madara scowled at her before stretching out his arm and pouring the blood of Shiranu across the ground, spilling it before her where she scowled beneath her mask, and clenched her fists at the defiance of the Uchiha head. However, sensing a presence and vile laughter did she break from her enraged stupor and back away wisely from the Uchiha. He kept staring at her before sensing the presence himself. You would reject this gift, said a deep booming voice as every time it took a step, the ground would break underneath his feet. You must be very prideful. Or very arrogant, or you're just foolish. Madara then growled a little and turned to face the owner of the voice with not even a shred of fear in his body. As a white wolf, the size of a mountain, began circling around the throne of stone, in the Uchiha clan before bracing his front, clawed paws against the throne, allowing the Uchiha clan to see him in all his magnificent glory. And suffice to say, he was not impressed at what he saw. His sharp wolf eyes staring across all the tiny men and women. And did you bring these mongrels here? Just to watch you die? Yelled Shiranu as he roared at the top of his lungs at the Uchiha head, who remained unfazed from the wolf's bellow. You will know that my legacy is shaped by my power and nothing else. I will show you that only beasts are above deceit. However, Madara just stood there, unmoving before he grinned, and his red eyes narrowed as fireballs came flying from behind him. Shionin merely looked up to see the raging balls of flame before they landed just in front of her, causing shockwaves that swept her off her feet, and to also land near Shiranu, who roared at the clan of shinobi. Meanwhile, Izuna Uchiha was waving his torch to his clansmen, alerting them to their attack, before turning around and yelling. Now, like his brother, he was unafraid of the threat before them. And from behind Izuna, 2 members of the clan burst forth and threw 2 human-sized harpoons connected together by a chain, engraved in seals used to bind powerful beings no matter the size. The 2 clansmen then threw the harpoons which bound Shiranu to one of the stone pillars, where he held in anger, the seals working against the mighty beast, sapping his strength and movement. Madara took careful and precise steps with his gunbai ready to strike the great wold. However, with a new surge of strength, did Shiranu break free from his restraints and charge up a swirling ball of white wind in his mouth and fire it at the Uchiha clan in a frenzy, and just as 2 more Uchiha came from behind Izuna with 2 more chain-bound harpoons at the ready. But Shiranu would not be bound again and fire off another ball of swirling wind towards the group of Uchiha as they were blasted back and away, while Izuna was able to duck away from the attack, but the 2 Uchiha clansmen had dropped the sealing harpoons in the process. Madara, seeing an opportunity, braced himself and ran across the field of rock, ducking under Shiranui's attacks and his clan's fire techniques. When he got to the harpoons, he threw his gunbai to the ground and picked up both harpoons, and because of the ceiling it made them heavier than what a normal human was used, and to do it with one hand as his other was preoccupied molding seals together for a technique. He then, with a roar and with all the strength he could muster, threw the harpoons at Shiranu, where he made another hand seal that increased the length of the chain where the harpoons coiled around Shiranui's front paws, entangling them and binding some of the wolf's power. Just as Madara was about to finish his jutsu, Shiranu saw him with the hand seals and even with the harpoons restricting his power. He prepared another ball of wind in his mouth, ready to fire it off at Madara, but the Uchiha would have none of that, as he just finished the last seal for his jutsu. Katan, Hagenski Okakin, Fire Release, Ash Rock Ember Flame, yelled Madara as he spewed out a large ash rock that only grew in size, covered in roaring red flames. The black ball of ashen rock in flames shredded the ground and rolled on before flying upwards and plummeting onto Shiranu, which made the wolf lose focus in preparing his attack as his body was engulfed by the flames and was stunned from the shockwave and rocks pounding against him. However, the wolf had lost sight of his prey, unaware that Madara was soaring through the air with his gunbai ready to strike, where he drove the weapon into Shiranui's forehead, causing Shiranu to roar in pain at the attack and unable to do anything from the harpoons binding him and the flames eating him. And cracks of light began spreading across Shiranui's body and appeared ready to explode. Izuna Uchiha, who had just gotten off the ground and hovered his hands before his face to keep the flying rock and ash out of his red eyes, looked towards his brother before realizing what was about to happen and ran at breakneck speed to reach his brother. Just as Shiranu fell to the ground, his body burst into flame and encroached upon Madara, who from the buffeting flames could only stand as hot flames flew by him and battered him as he literally stared into the inferno. And just as a shockwave of even more powerful flames was about to hit him and end his life in the world, he was tackled out of the way by his younger brother, ensuring that the chieftain didn't leave the world too quickly as the flames flew by them. When the smoke and ash cleared, it revealed the dead body of Shiranu with Madara's Dynabe lodged into his skull as red blood oozed across the ground, staining the rock as Madara's fire was still eating at the wolf's body. Shionin, Shiranui's servant, was lying on the ground not too far away from the wolf's body. On her hands and knee was breathing hoarsely from the experience as her form was caked in ash and her hair was burned in some place. She then felt a shadow hovering over her then felt a hand placed on her shoulder, pulling her up, where she stared the Uchiha in the eye through the holes in her mask. "This was not your destiny," she spoke, but Izuna Uchiha merely looked at her with a bored glance. "Things happen," said Izuna before pushing her to the ground and approaching the corpse of Shiranu, where he yanked his brother's gunbai from the wolf's head as its wood was covered in his cursed blood. Izun stared at the gunbai for a while before looking over to his brother and tossed the weapon to his chieftain, who was unharmed from what happened. Madara caught his weapon and scowled at the blood dripping off it. "No one can deny my fate," whispered Madara before turning to his clan and hoisting his gunbai above his head in a victorious manner. "We will never be slaves, but we will be conquerors," boomed Madara with his brother beside him as the rest of the Uchiha clan roared in praise. "Our bond is iron. Our will unbreakable. Who will dare stare against us? To be cursed as violent berserkers, that was the price, but would it be worth it? Under the great wolf's thumb." Flashback end. Shiranu could not simply be killed with weapons such as those. He was like a biju, his chakra would only disperse and would coalesce later on. But still, he had to understand Naruto's game. Just what was he planning, and would he walk down that same path as Madara had? Elsewhere in a small forest, daybreak was just beginning to be glimpsed over the horizon as streams of light began piercing the darkness as small animals scurried out of their homes and into the warm rays, where they began their day like any other animal. Lying on the ground, naked and warm, was a woman with blue hair, whose eyes were just beginning to break open. Grogginess was still overcoming her, but otherwise, she was fine. She then lifted herself up off the ground with her arms and into a lying position. She looked all around her. The storm that had poured down upon her was gone, replaced by a beaming sun and open sky, which was even visible through the trees. She then brought up her left arm before her face, and found that the black cracks that were causing her so much pain before were now gone, leaving unblemished, soft skin. She felt fine, content. No, it was more than that. She felt stronger. All the weaknesses that had plagued her before, her body no longer felt heavy. It was more like a feather than anything. She could no longer feel any strain or fatigue as she moved her body. It was a strange feeling. Her body also felt lighter, almost as if it could fly. None of the things that plagued her before had just seemed to up and vanish. But there was something else, something second nature to her. She couldn't explain it. She felt like she could do it at any moment, just unleash this second nature of hers without any trouble. Whatever it was, it almost beckoned her. Without even realizing it, she tapped into this new power of hers where she underwent a transformation. She felt an absolutely overwhelming power flower through her and began changing her very appearance. Her ears became slightly pointed like a dog's, her canines grew a little and became sharper, more fang-like, her hair became more manic and wild where it was now slightly spiky, the sclera in her eyes became black and her pupils became slits, her muscles became slightly larger, but still kept her light appearance, and a scar-like X sprouted between her eyes, which ended at her cheeks bones and near hairline. Power coursing through the woman lifted her head and roared like an animal to the sky, scaring all the small animals, making them flee in fear of the woman. It was official. Conan had awakened Yabanana Basaka Henkin, bestial berserker transformation. And anything in the forest knew this. At Huzukijo, in the courtyard where prisoners and guards alike were watching a spectacle to unfold, Ryuyoke's was found once again confronting the lord of the castle. Mui. Are you mad? Do you wish to be thrown into solitary once again? Spoke Mui, his voice even louder than usual, showing his annoyance at the blonde man's actions, while said blonde continued to stare at him with the same impassive eyes. The last time we spoke, you refused to speak any more of Takurufu. Well, this time I'm going to beat the answers out of you. I'm done being nice. Tell me of Takurufu, anything you know, also I'll know if you're lying. Just who am I? Yelled Naruto, and that thought was always on his mind. Takurufu, just who was he? He couldn't remember. How could he be a root agent when all he could remember was being in the academy? You really wish to know? Very well. Takurufu was a remarkable agent of Root, one of the best, despite his young age. However, he believed through a code that old enough to kill, old enough to be killed was merely his everyday life. It's the way the shinobi world works. Each mission Takurufu was assigned succeeded without failure, and if Takurufu was to fail in his mission, he would complete one of the key objectives of said mission. Takurufu was a Fuinjutsu master. In fact, he made many of the seals here in Huzukijo. The seals he created was meant to better shinobi in every way for the ultimate goal of peace. I don't know the specific missions, he went on, but he always came back, either with his comrades, without them, or covered in blood. Takurufu did it all. I don't know the exact circumstances as to why he joined Root, but all I know, it was meant to contain something dangerous. Informed Mui, making Naruto raise an eyebrow at him. Could this thing be the QB? However, none of this made sense to Naruto. It was as if Mui was recounting memories that never happened, and through it Naruto's curse seal on his left arm began pulsing more and more. What is he doing? Thought/questioned Ryuzutsu, who was watching the whole thing transpire before her eyes, not understanding what Ryu would gain from such a thing. None of the words the two men spoke made any sense to her. Perhaps now, your curiosity is sated, said Mui as he turned his back on Naruto, who remained standing, staring at his back. You know, you asked me what my village was to me. I have no village. Well, it's more appropriate to say that I had a village. I've been trying to think about it. Whenever I try to think about the things I hate, but I can only think about the dumbest things: a ramen shop, the way the wind blows, a green idiot's jumpsuit and terrible haircut, my old apartment, even the damn clouds and their shapes. Things that seem silly or meaningless to a stranger. I try to remember what I hate, but all I can seem to remember were the eyes. I know they did more terrible things than that. I can remember it, but I can't remember it, said Naruto, but what he said seemed to strike something important within Mui, as his eyes apparently had just saw death. Take him to solitary, said Mui, and the guards came and took Naruto by his arms. The third events is 1 week. If you keep this up, we're gonna run out of regulations, and then we'll be improvising soon. It's about time we gave you your own personal cell with a nameplate on the door. At night, a guard was making his way to Ryuzutsu's cell, both members of the Grassfruit faction. Please hurry, here's the key, said the guard as he removed the barriers of Ryuzutsu's cell so she could go and complete her mission. He then gave her the key and she gripped it in her fist. I can't wait any longer. Killing Mui will keep the box from opening, at least for now, thought Ryuzutsu as she stared down at her bandaged hand. In Mui's room, with only the light of a candle providing any visible sight, was Mui sleeping in his bed, seemingly dead, or that was what it appeared to be. He was so ingrained in sleep that he did not notice the shadow of Ryuzutsu creeping through the darkness. Quiet and subtle, she made her way to the edge of Mui's bed, standing over him without making a sound before pulling out a kunai knife from her clothing, ready to end his life. But in an instant Mui's eyes snapped open, and with a malicious grin on his face. Well, so the Grassfruit sent an assassin. Spoke Moi as Ryuzutsu plunged her kunai into his chest, but at that moment, she was overwhelmed by a plume of smoke, which made it difficult for Ryuzutsu to see, and as the smoke dissipated she found herself at the mercy of Moroi, who held a kunai to her neck ready to kill her with a simple gesture of the arm. "Sorry, you just missed him, he had to step out for a minute, but is there anything I can help with?" said Moroi with a shit-eating grin. As Naruto was presumably meditating in his solitary cell, his mind kept traveling towards his blue-haired partner. He didn't know if she was dead or alive. Very few actually survived Shiranui's blood. Many believed that Yabanana Basaka, Henkin, could be learned. That was false. It was acquired by either drinking or transfusing Shiranui's blood. Can the transformation be attained? They gain Shiranui's Senjutsu chakra and use it as their own. Of course they use it internally, so therefore the seal on Naruto's chest restricted the blonde from entering the transformation. But externally was a different matter. He could only hope that Conan was alive, but still this sense of dependency was sickening. He felt himself lusting, hungering for her. It didn't sound right, no, not at all. He felt anxious when he looked upon her. This feeling was near intolerable, and yet he hungered for it. Elsewhere as hours passed, Ryuzutsu and Moroi were talking in the courtyard. This was a discussion that must be uttered, if not the true motives of each individual party would be clouded from the other. "So, why'd you let me go?" questioned the Kusagakure Anbu as she leaned against one of the castle's pillars with Moroi leaning against another side of the same pillar. "You were really set to assassinate Moi?" "Huh?" spoke Moroi as he crossed his arms with a smirk on his face, delving into Ryuzutsu's mind and her mission details. "If that's true, guess there must be something to the legend of this box. You know you're not going to get your way with that box." "I swear," spoke Ryuzutsu, turning her head and narrowing her eyes at the criminal, who merely shrugged at the glare he was receiving. This was also an attempt to show her conviction to her cause. She lost too much to that fucking box, and she would be damned to allow any more innocence to be sacrificed to such an unholy object. "I couldn't give two shits about all that. I'm just looking for an easy time, that's all. Though can't do much with this damn seal on me, so as long as I'm stuck here, makes sense to be on Mui's good side, right?" continued Moroi, making Ryuzutsu doubt any trust she had in him. "What are you driving at?" questioned the white-haired woman, as in all her years as a member of the Anbu, she had never met such a slippery eel as Moroi. He was like Ryu in that aspect, as you couldn't understand what was going through their mind. "Oh come on, don't you see? If Moi dies I'll be free of this joint, your mission will be a success, so you and I, maybe we're like on the same team," said Moroi as he turned his head to look at his fellow compatriot, who looked him in the eye without a shred of fear. "So, you have something in mind? I can lay the groundwork for you." "Why in the world should I trust you? I don't even know you. You don't know Ryu either, and yet you trust him. You know why Kusagakure like it here at Huzukido so much? One thing, it's the perfect place to hide the Gokuraku no Hako, box of ultimate bliss. Then there's the endless supply of prisoners' chakra to harvest as they try to find a way to open the damn thing. Anybody who gets sent to this place is as good as dead. Personally, I'm not looking forward to the night they come and drain the chakra out of me. So you see, this means as much to me as it does to you." At that moment Ryuzutsu walked around the corner to come face to face with him. She had enough of his little games, and it was painfully irritating. "Okay, just who the hell are you anyway? How do you know so much about it?" questioned Ryuzutsu with a scowl on her face that could melt ice. "I've been hanging around Moi for a while now. So what do you say? Partners?" spoke Moroi with the same shit-eating grin, which made Ryuzutsu frown at him. At night Naruto was still sitting in a meditative stance, his mind focused solely on his objective. Hours passed as the light of the sun and moon moved from one corner of the room to another, and not once did he move from his position or even flinch. And on his last day, the guard finally ushered him out of the cell that he had grown so accustomed to. And as the door was closing, the guard never noticed the two clones of the man sitting behind the door in the same meditative stance. Back in the courtyard, Naruto and Ryuzutsu were having their own conversation about the recent events. "No, I can't say that I trust this Moroi completely, but it's a risk we have to take," spoke Ryuzu as her eyes were glued to the inmates in the castle and going about their average daily lives, never doing anything in particular. "This Gokuraku no Hako is supposed to grant the wish of anyone, any wish of their heart's desire. What's interfering with your faction, the grass fruit, from taking advantage of the box yourselves? Why don't you just use the box for world peace and end my existence and reason to live in this dying world?" spoke Naruto as he watched the clouds go by from his sitting position while listening to Ryuzutsu's statement. We can't, it's far too dangerous a weapon, and people must learn for themselves that we will never have peace until there is an end to war. Proclaimed Ryuzutsu, which made Naruto snort in response, eliciting a frown from Ryuzutsu, who heard the snort. War is the blood of this world, and we are its children. Our legacy is a legacy of carnage and conquest. War is in a human's very nature, it's their instinct. Peace can be attained, the temporary peace that we know today. True peace is nothing more than an idle fantasy," said Naruto, explaining his thoughts on peace and war on the matter. "Doesn't matter, that box must not be allowed to exist in this world," said Ryuzutsu, to which Naruto nodded at her, but her words seemed to strike him like hot iron. He remembered a time when people would say that to him, he remembered their words all too well. "Miui-san, what was he to you?" queried Naruto, as he had been generally curious about her strange relationship with her enemy's son. "What do you mean?" asked Ryuzutsu, wanting him to clarify his question a bit more so to unknowingly comfort her. "The way you talk about him, I felt a lot of raw emotions running through you, so I just wanted to know." "It reminds me of someone," spoke Naruto, trying to remember someone who he believed was important to him. "His name was Muku, he was a very close friend," replied Ryuzutsu, to which Naruto nodded, and got off his sitting position in order to face her. "That's all I needed to know. You have my trust now, I'll lend you my aid," responded the blonde as he locked eyes with her, and she could see his unwavering determination in his eyes. "You're not scared of the seal on your chest?" "No, I don't fear anything, and this seal on my chest is not something I would classify as a fear." Ryuzutsu merely smiled at him before he started walking away to go do his own thing. "Alright then, time to get to work." As Moi was walking through the yards of the castle, alone and unguarded, he took the time to survey his surroundings and watch the criminals go about their pathetic lives. He then turned his head where he heard yelling coming from a blonde-haired man that was throwing fists at another of the inmates. And as the two were getting punched around, they were ever so subtly beating up the other inmates that were caught in the crossfire, before enraging them, where they too began fighting everyone else. It soon exploded into an all-out brawl where all the prisoners were getting involved in the riot. Even Moroi was doing his part by having the criminals accidentally fuel the fight in the kitchen, where food and drink and bodies were being thrown about like rag dolls, where the rioting had spread out to the entire courtyard, where even the guards were unable to quell the violence. Naruto meanwhile was fighting the criminals, any who attacked him with skillful ease from his advanced taijutsu, easily blocking and countering attacks even without the Sharingan active. Ryuzutsu was very much the same, as she beat up any who crossed her, although was more brutal with her attacks than Naruto at the moment. All hell's breaking loose. "A riot, how could you let this happen? Inform Moi-sama at once." Moi meanwhile was standing on the sidelines watching the chaos unfold before his eyes, and an increasing scowl spread across his face at the scene. He was watching while a guard next to him was questioning him for instructions and a possible way to stop the fighting. "This is a minor disturbance. Deal with his problem yourselves, or I'll find someone that will," yelled Moi, losing his usual calm composure over a steadfast aggressive approach. However, he was unaware of Ryuzutsu's presence stalking him from behind. She had slipped away from the fighting by using the crowd as cover to avoid detection. They did say sometimes that the crowd was the greatest disguise. You can get lost in a field of bodies. Moroi and Naruto had also slipped away into the unknown, the blonde heading to his goal and Moroi heading for the roof. Naruto quickly and stealthily made his way through the halls and doors of the castle, aiming for Miui's office. Luckily for him, he had met no resistance, as most if not all of the guards were trying to ease the fighting. When he finally made it to Miui's office, he headed for the bookshelf, where most of the switches to one's evil lair would be found. Pretty cliché too. He then pulled upon a book on the shelf, which opened a small cabinet where it led to Miui's laboratory deep in the bowels of the castle, where the gate to the Gokuraku no Hako, box of ultimate bliss. As he scaled down the stairs, leading deeper and deeper in the earth, he knew that he could only assume the form a total of 2 times with the amount of clones he made. And the seal interfered with the molding of chakra, so the form would be weaker also. Unlike Sage Mode, the form can only be activated internally with special Senjutsu chakra. Unlike Sage Mode, Naruto needed a way to activate the form externally. So long as the seal was on him, he would have the trouble of not only activating the technique but also maintaining it. Hopefully he can master the jutsu before he actually had need of the form. Naruto then lit up a torch that illuminated the darkness and allowed him to see in the barely visible light. He then found the gate to the box, a large and imposing mask. He then threw the torch to the ground where it was still blazing. He gripped the zipper of his black cloak and pulled it down to his waist and removed his arms from the sleeves, where the cloak was now hanging from his waist, loosely, where anyone could see his rippling muscle underneath and the hideous scar on his left pectoral above his heart. As Moi was overseeing the riot and all the violence, he suddenly noticed the shadow of Ryuzutsu, running up behind with a kunai at the ready. She tried lashing at his neck but to no avail as he briskly dodged all of her attacks with relative ease. He then blocked another of her attacks with a chain sickle, which made a reverberating ring, which was dulled from the yelling of the riot. Both parties then jumped back from each other to gain some distance from the other where Ryuzutsu ducked her head to avoid the chain sickle before it killed her. Mui then grinned maliciously at Ryuzutsu, who knew that the person she had been fighting wasn't the man she was led to believe. "Come on, not again, where's the real one? Tell me or I'll kill you too," said Ryuzutsu as she raised her kunai at the man before he ran off. Naruto meanwhile held out his arm in front of him and bit into it, drawing blood where it dripped down to his hand. He then made the jutsu-specific seal, so to release his shadow clones. But he suddenly sensed the presence of 5 intruders where they swarmed around him and slammed their palms on the ground, activating a seal that reacted within a second and bound his movements, where he was paralyzed, forced to remain still. "One of your very own seals, Takurufu. Very handy when it comes to subjugation," said one of the masked individuals that bound Naruto, and somehow knew of his unknown history with Root. "At last this dog is ours, he possesses more than enough chakra to open the gate. Soon Kusagakyure will rise again, and no one will be able to stop us." And at that time Mui picked up the burning torch where Naruto locked eyes with him, and the unspoken words between the two didn't need to be conveyed with words. Mui then walked up and held the torch to Naruto's face, where the blonde didn't flinch from the heat of the fire or the light it was emitting. "You're such a fool, this could have been much easier," said Mui as he threw the torch away, and jabbed his fingers into Naruto, where he immobilized the blonde more and disrupted the flow of his chakra with careful pressure points, and also incapacitating him and forcing him to fall to his knees, where his body became numb and unmovable. The 4 masked individuals then gently placed the unmoving blonde, whose eyes were watching them, glaring at them, onto the operating table. "First I shall undo the Tenro, heavenly prison," said Mui as he placed his hand on Naruto's chest, where it began to glow, and the seal retracted into his hand. One of the masked men placed a cloth of Naruto's eyes, stopping the effects of the Sharingan should the blonde use it against them. The next step requires intense concentration. This must be done alone. Elsewhere on the raging lake that surrounded the castle, small boats were making their way towards the castle, carrying people of skill and power. Moroi, standing on the roof, made a seal and thrusted his hand in the air. "Reitan, Denko Narashi, lightning release, lightning signal fire," yelled Moroi as he triggered an electrical discharge where it traveled into the sky and exploded, setting off a signal. The boats on the lake began to row towards the castle, though it would be a few minutes before they would arrive. All Naruto could see was darkness as the blindfold around his eyes stopped him from seeing anything. "Almost there," said a voice to which he recognized as Mui's, as he could feel his presence hovering over him, drawing something on his abdomen which felt like liquid, possibly a seal. The gate to the box then started, making a resounding sound as it could feel Naruto's powerful chakra. Then from a seal on Naruto's belly to which Mui had drawn, explosive blue chakra began exploding out and flew towards the demonic face of the gate. For Naruto it felt like he was having all the warmth from his body being sucked out of his very being. The 8 then began responding to the chakra, where Naruto's eyes began changing shape and color, where for very few moments there would be Sharingan before switching to slitted orange eyes, and crimson markings appeared on his forehead, beneath his eyes and on his chin, then would switch to a scar like X on between his eyes, and the crimson markings would disappear again. Even his hair was changing color, from its blonde to a light gray color, then back to blonde. Now that he wasn't bound by the chakra-suppressing seal on his chest, Naruto focused chakra into his wrist, seal where the Tonbagari appeared in his left hand, and attempted to swipe at Mui, who jumped away from the attack. "It's extraordinary, the amount of chakra a former Jinchuriki can possess," said Mui as he stood before the gate of the box as Naruto dragged himself off the table and removed the cloth around his eyes where they shifted into Sharingan. "You son of a bitch, what kind of man would murder his own child just to achieve his goals? Were you really that desperate to get your wish?" yelled Naruto, because although he wouldn't say it out loud, Naruto would relish in the chance to create a perfect life that he brought into the world. "This is for the future of Kusagakyure," replied Mui as he stood against Naruto, stoic and proud. "The future? Don't use such bullshit to justify your actions. You have little right to talk about the future when you sacrificed your sons. The boy who trusted you, depended on you, and loved you above all else as his father. Parents have no right to dictate the future of their children," yelled Naruto as he was expressing his own pain at what his father, the Yondaime Hokage, did to him, basically deciding his future like every other Jinchuriki to be a weapon. "If you remember, I asked you once. Have you ever killed someone you had no grudge against in order to protect your sacred village? Spoke Moy as his eyes narrowed at the blonde-haired man. Of course I remember, those words have been dogging after me ever since they flew out of your mouth. And don't you remember my answer? What a load bullshit. Shouted Naruto to Moy, showing something that had not been seen in the blonde for a long time. You said those words to me once before. As to Kurufu. And I agree with you. Said Moy, surprising Naruto as the whole foundation of the castle began to move, stir and shake beneath their feet. We are the same, you and I, suffering because of our villages. We don't deserve such a fate after what we have sacrificed, my son and the person you loved most. Said Moy as behind him, the gate began cracking before it began spinning and moving upwards towards the surface, creating a small dust cloud in its wake. And that is the very reason this box must be opened. Join me and you can see her again. Said Moy as he dodged rocks that almost fell on him, and Naruto began doing the same before ascending to the surface by jumping off the walls and the occasional falling rocks, with Moy chasing after him. Damn it, I had so much of my chakra drained that I've become exhausted. Thought Naruto as he could feel the effects lingering on him. Ascending higher and higher until he could see light through the windows of the tower. He finally came to a stop on a staircase where he fell to one knee, and in time to see Moy flipping over him, grabbing a chain, running along the wall, and jumping towards Naruto with his hand outstretched. Katan, Tenro, fire release, heavenly prison. Yelled Moy as he slammed his hand against Naruto's chest, where the seal reappeared and hitting him with enough force that it sent him flying out of the tower and crashing into the ground below. As they felt the ground quake beneath them, the prisoners stopped their riot before turning towards the center of the castle, where red lines converged on a single spot where something large penetrated the ground, sending dust and smoke across the area, where a bright light burst forth from the cracks and into the sky where it separated the clouds. Then a large square thing came out of the ground, with each side adorned with demonic faces with glowing red eyes. The entire spectacle was enough to create a massive dust cloud that could be seen just about anywhere. Moroi watched the entire thing from his position on the roof. Oh well, so the gate and the box are one and the same, said Moroi as he narrowed his eyes at his emergence. The four masked members of the Flower faction watched with utter joy at the appearance of the box, believing that their wishes would be granted. Magnificent, soon, very soon. Moy, where is Moy? The box will only open to the gatekeeper. Where is he? Ah, there he is. Hurry Moy, come and wish for the revival of Kusagakur, it's what your late son would have wanted. Said one of the masked members, unaware to Mui's true motives. As the criminals watched the warden walk up to the box, Moy had a blank face, adorned on his visage, hiding his true intent on those around him. It is time, said Moy as he made a seal as he stood before the box. He raised his arms toward the box and chanted out his wish. Hear me, Gokuraku no Hako. Open, I command you. Bellowed Moy as the box acquired a black smoky aura around it. At that time Naruto made his reappearance, and he was fine for the moment, just some scrapes and bruises that were already beginning to heal. However, the blonde was one of the few to notice the tears streaming down Mui's cheeks. Grant me this one wish. Let me see my son Muku. Gokuraku no Hako. Grant me this wish. I command you. Yelled Moy as everyone was genuinely surprised at what he wanted, though from his words, Naruto guessed as much, but his mind was still befuddled over the one he loved most. The box seemingly responding to Mui's wish. Moy. What have you done? Yelled one of the masked members, shocked at what Moy had done. Have you gone mad? I banished Kusagakur from my heart long ago. 10 years ago. On the day I lost Muku. Yelled Moy towards the masked people who moved against him, ready to strike him down for his act of defiance. Ryuzutsu was also going to step in, but a multiple chain sickles appeared from nowhere, stopping the masked members in their tracks, where a second Moy appeared from nowhere and landed by the other Mui's side, leaving everyone watching stunned at what they were seeing. Why are you here? I didn't recall asking for your aid. Spoke Moy to his imposter, who merely scowled at his words. Oh, shut up, frankly I had been looking forward to killing you myself. Said the Moy imposter before creating a hand seal and dropping his disguise, where a bald man with a goatee and a kimono shirt appeared in his place. You. Hyaku Henge no Kazan, 100 transformations Kazan, impossible, we watched you die. Moy, you bastard. If it weren't for your interference I would have joined my son in the afterlife. Did you think you could toy with Hyaku no Henge Kazan? Said Kazan as he prepared himself to attack the masked people who had killed his son. Moy, you traitor. This is what you were plotting all along. You treacherous dog. You're ones to talk about treachery. yelled Kazan as he ran at the council members ready to end them. At that moment the box began to act strange as a humming sound could be heard as one of its face began falling apart, revealing another demonic face behind the crumbling one, before opening its mouth wide where peerless black could be seen. Everyone watched with bated breaths at what was happening and what to expect. And from the blackness come a silhouette of what appeared to be a young man before fully materializing. He was wearing a faded blue kimono shirt, black arm warmers that appeared to have been stretched over time, and his pants appeared to barely fit him. He had pale skin with dulled gray hair tied into a ponytail, and his eyes had this dead look in them, similar to Naruto's. It was Muku, Mui's son. Ryuzutsu just knew it, and Naruto could see the resemblance. Muku, breathed Ryuzutsu, seeing her best friend after all these years. Mui then walked up to his son with a small smile on his face, and tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. "Hello, father," said Muku, uttering his first words in over 10 years. "My son. Please forgive me. I was so wrong, Muku," said Mui with a smile on his face as Muku walked up to him, possibly to embrace his father, but minus. Instead, Muku rammed his hand through his father's chest, straight through with little to no effort, as his father's blood flew from the wounded and stained the ground. Everyone but Naruto gasped at the scene, as they never expected such violence. However, Naruto knew he wanted to do something similar to his own father, Minato Namikaze, therefore he could understand Muku and his unbridled hatred for his father who condemned him. Muku then yanked out his arm where his father, losing the smile, fell to the ground, while Muku had the same emotionless look on his face that Naruto always had. "Mui!" yelled Kazan, seeing that man that saved his life mercilessly struck down by his own kin. Kazan rage was taking over as he rushed at Muku with his 2 sickles, but he was nothing more than an annoyance, a fly buzzing around an elephant to Muku, who bisected him from the waist with his hand, blood and guts flying over the place, and Kazan dying instantly. The masked people cowered at the sheer strength of Muku, afraid of his might and strength and fearing his wrath. "Yes, father, you were wrong. For letting me out of the box," said Muku as he wiped his father's blood off his hand and sported a small grin on his face. Naruto, regaining some of his lost strength, walked forward towards Muku with his emotionless face in full force. Muku, sensing his presence, turned to face him with a similar emotionless visage. "So, you're the one whose chakra let me out of that box. The ones who responsible for making me stronger with this exquisite chakra," said Muku as Naruto stopped walking and stood before him, his cloak hanging loosely on his hips. "I could understand why you would do such a thing," stated Naruto, his blue, sapphire eyes piercing into Muku's own. "Do you now? I wonder how you could understand such a thing. Killing your own father," said Muku as the blonde person in front of him intrigued his curiosity. Did he too hold contempt for the man that gave him life? "My father tried to protect me, too. Didn't work. The realities of life have a way of intruding," spoke Naruto, to which Muku continued to stare at him, wondering just how he could hate his father. From what he said, that wasn't enough reason to hate him. "But I can sense that overwhelming foul presence inside you, ready to burst free." And from his words Muku smiled a little. This man must have similar skills to his own to able to sense that. "It almost sounds like you want to kill me, to stop this presence from breaking free and killing you. Is this fear? Or simply a lust for death?" replied Muku, to which Naruto narrowed his eyes. "Well, first of all," spoke Muku, where Naruto's eyes widened, losing sight of the man in front of him, where said man suddenly appeared behind the blonde and kicked him in the head, sending him flying and rolling across the ground. Naruto, reacting to this, regained his footing and continued sliding across the ground, but he then found Muku in front of him, where the boy punched him in the stomach, making Naruto cough up spit from the attack. But Muku wasn't finished, as then lifted up Naruto and slammed him into the ground, causing spiderweb cracks to appear and a large dust cloud. "I better listen to what this presence is whispering to me." And Naruto coughed up some more spit as he had trouble breathing. He could sense it. Muku had grown stronger from the box, absorbing Naruto's chakra, which was now fueling Muku's own power. Then the thought came to him, Naruto couldn't defeat this opponent the way he was now. "Muku!" yelled Ryuzutsu as the box's prisoner was standing of Naruto, and when hearing the voice of his old friend looked over his shoulder to look at his old friend. "What happened to you? What happened inside the box? Something's changed, you're not the same minus." "Yes, I have changed, I'm now something more. I'm still unsure if I should condemn or praise my father for feeding me to the box. But you can't deny the benefits of such a thing," spoke Muku as he held up his hand and clenched it, feeling this raw power and chakra coursing through him. The chakra of the blonde man he was standing over. Naruto, seeing an opening to attack, got up from his lying position and aimed a punch for Muku's face, however said opponent nimbly and easily dodged the punch and then grasped Naruto's face in his hand and slammed him into the ground again. "That was rude, can't you see we're talking?" said Muku as he stared down at Naruto again before kicking him in the chest, making the blonde cough. If it wasn't for the seal on his chest restricting him, he might be able to do something and at least be able to access his Sharingan. "You are not the Muku I used to know," said Ryuzutsu as she tugged on her bandana, releasing it from her head and allowing her soft white hair to fall freely. "There's a part of yourself you haven't lost yet. It's not too late to return to what you were before the box claimed you. There is something different about you," said Muku, staring at Ryuzutsu before taking a few steps away from Naruto's down form. "You're now an annoyance." And with those words, it felt like something had shattered in Ryuzutsu, something broke inside of her. This truly wasn't the Muku she remembered. No, he is replaced by this thing in front of her. "Why don't you shut your mouth already?" said Naruto as he lifted himself off the ground and stared at Muku, who turned his head to look at him through corner of his eye. "A word of advice, a lesson my father taught me. Do not fear pain. Embrace it. Use it. Then no one can stand against you. And I carry that pain wherever I go." Naruto then bit into his left arm, drawing blood, and then made the seal for the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, where he deactivated one of his clones where they disappeared in a plume of smoke. He then clapped his hands together where wind seemed to pick up along around him, and a bright light could been breaking through the cracks in his fingers. Naruto then opened up his palms to reveal a translucent ball of light. "Kuchios Naisuki, summoning false moon," said Naruto as the ball later dissipated, and what was left behind was nothing more than an empty space. Muku raised his eyebrow at this, confused as to what just happened. The upheaving wind died down and Muku could see nothing to indicate any changes in the blonde man's power, but he noticed it. His appearance had changed. His wars had become slightly pointed, his canines were more bared and fang-like, and his hair was now maic and wild, where they had broken through the bandages of his low ponytail, giving him a more feral and wild appearance. The sclera in his eyes were now black, and his pupils had become slits while his irises were now amber-orange in color. His muscles also appeared more developed, and he was slightly larger, and most noticeably was a scar-like X sprouting between his eyes, ending at his cheekbones and hairline. "Is the minus?" questioned Muku. However, he was cut off from saying more as Naruto rushed at him and punched him in the face, sending him flying away. He was shocked. He could clearly sense that attack incoming, and yet he had no way to defend against it. It's like the blonde's speed had just increased immensely. Before he could regain his footing, he was stopped as Naruto suddenly appeared from behind and kneed him in the spine, making Muku cough up spit at the attack. But before he could send flying of again, he was elbowed in the face and into the ground. Naruto was going to continue the assault. Muku rolled away and with quick reflexes kicked Naruto in the jaw, sending him a bit away, strafing across the ground. Muku, not intending to be outdone by the blonde, chased after him where he punched Naruto in the gut, stunning him, where Muku grabbed the sides of his head and brutally kneeing him in the face, stunning him even more. Muku then appeared behind the blonde and elbowed in the back of the head, dazing the blonde even further and finally, kneeing him in the gut, making him graze the ground but otherwise was still on his feet. When Naruto eventually regained his senses, he could feel this warm trickle dripping down his chin where he brought his right hand and rubbed it off and focused his eyes on it. "Blood. That what it was? Guess I have the honor of first blood," said Muku, who grinned, wiping the blood of his chin. Naruto and Muku charged at each other again and met each other with a clash of fists which created shockwaves on impact. They backed away from each other, rushing again and again, smashing their fists together and creating shockwaves again and again. Ryuzutsu and Moroi were watching the whole thing from a safe distance and both were amazed at the level of power the two were showing. "It's like I'm watching an unstoppable force fighting an immovable object," said Ryuzutsu as she could see the shockwaves resounding through the air. Moroi soon landed next to her and decided to explain the situation. "Yokaze is using a special form of senjutsu that I didn't believe to exist until now. Yabanana Basaka Henkin, Bestial Berserker Transformation. According to what little we know of the transformation, it combines the user's chakra and a special form of senjutsu located in their bodies. I don't know where the senjutsu comes from, but when the two chakras become one it creates the transformation. But unfortunately for Yokaze, because of the Tenra restricting his chakra, the senjutsu can't properly mix with his chakra, so he's just relying on the senjutsu located in him. Basically, he's fighting tooth and nail to the bitter end in this fight," said Moroi, making Ryuzutsu worry for both parties. Back to the fight, Muku was about to punch Naruto again, but instead the blonde ducked under the punch and landing his own attack on Muku's face, stunning him and allowing Naruto to knee him in the gut, causing Muku to spit out blood. The berserker then grabbed Muku by his kimono shirt and slammed him to the ground and tried to stomp the son of Mui, but Muku instead caught his foot and also slammed him into the ground. Both parties got up off the ground and gained some distance from the other. Naruto in a burst of speed appeared before Muku and tried to kick him in the stomach, but Muku jumped away. Muku then channeled chakra into his throat preparing a jutsu. Pain Renda, Feather Barrage! Yelled Muku as he opened his mouth and screeched as countless feathers were fired frantically from his mouth in order to kill the blonde Akatsuki member, with Naruto dodging them though, with trouble at the sheer amount of razor-sharp feathers being launched at him. Naruto responded with his own attack by also channeling chakra into his throat. Okamisha Anarai, wolf-piercing howl! Responded Naruto as and emitted a loud howl that resounded like a bell and also sounding like a wolf howl at the same time, with a beam of chakra, emitting sound wave-like rings, flew at Muku who barely dodged it in time, but the jutsu is strong enough to completely destroy one of the walls of the castle. Muku in retaliation made a hand seal for a fire jutsu. Katan, Onodoro, fire release, demon lantern! Yelled Muku as numerous floating balls appeared around him and quickly took the shape of demon heads and soared towards Naruto who dodged them as he made his way towards Muku. However, he was overwhelmed by the vast number of fireballs as they swarmed around him and lit his body aflame. Muku merely watched his handiwork as he could hear some yells of resistance. He soon saw Naruto bound out of the flames with burn marks on his form but would otherwise be alright. He then charged at Muku again, but the blonde's opponent brought up his hands and just as Naruto was about to land a hit on him, he was violently repulsed back by a shockwaves of Muku's doing, and rocketed back where he smashed against a wall of one of the castle's buildings, creating a dust cloud and almost causing the building to collapse under its own weight. Reitan, Reikoho, Thunder Warseer! Yelled a voice from the dust cloud as a massive lightning strike appeared from the dust cloud and was flying at Muku who met the lightning head-on. A clash was heard as Muku charged at the lightning where the electricity was sparking and grazing at his body as he shielded himself formed the brunt of the attack to get to Naruto. When he was close enough, Muku in a burst of speed, exited the stream of lightning and rushed towards Naruto's side where he double punched the blonde in the chest, sending him back and crashing into another building of the castle with Muku after him. Muku was about to punch Naruto again, but the blonde caught his punch, where in response Muku attempted to punch him again, but Naruto also caught the fist again. Muku ungrappled his fists and was now pushing against Naruto's own, where the two were exerting all their strength, trying to push the other back. The amount of power being exerted was causing a small crater to form around the two, sinking deeper and deeper into the ground. And through sheer effort, Muku fell to one knee unable to hold back Naruto's strength. But deciding to fight dirty, Muku broke off the hold and did an uppercut on Naruto's chin, stunning him where Muku followed it up with a punch to the chest and then another. Naruto getting over his stupor gave two hooks to Muku stunning him where Naruto then pushed against his opponent, with Muku's feet scraping the ground. But Muku with skill, dug his hands around Naruto's waist and hoisted him up in the air with his head facing the ground. Muku then launched himself forward where he pummeled Naruto in the side of the crater they created. But Muku was a brutal fighter and grabbed Naruto's feet where Muku used him as a rag doll, smashing him against the walls and floors of the castle's buildings. After he was done pummeling Naruto, he threw him back into the courtyard of the castle. Both fighters were covered in cuts and bruises and some of their wounds were oozing blood. They were both relentless in their attacks, abandoning strategy just to kill each other. Naruto getting back onto his feet, stared at Muku with his slitted orange eyes, before roaring like an animal at his opponent. With the fight still unfinished, both Muku and Naruto launched themselves at each other, where two met in a violent clash where a blinding light could be seen with their fists and legs fling frantically, trying to eat the other. Naruto gaining an upper hand in their fanatic fighting, was able to punch Muku and fling him over his shoulder where Naruto made a seal for a jutsu. Futon, Swaisuke no Jutsu, Wind Release, Chasing Prey Technique. Yelled Naruto as he held out his hands as wind chakra gathered around them as he fired multiple sharp rabbits made of wind at Muku, instinctively dodging every one of them and appearing behind Naruto and fired off some feathers from his mouth with Naruto blocking most of them though some grazed past him and were able to cut his skin. Muku again flew at Naruto where they clashed with fists and attacks, blocking and dodging the opponents' punches and kicks, some of their punches and kicks causing shockwaves on impact. They were moving at such high speeds that each time their clashes met they were in a different place in the courtyard and heading for the structures of the castle. With Ryuzutsu and Moroi as well as some of the prisoners fleeing to take cover from the two clashing titans. When they unknowingly made it to the towers of the castle, each punch, kick and step was creating cracks on the surface. And with time Muku was gaining an advantage over Naruto as the speed of his attacks increased, and as he successfully punched Naruto over and over again he was stunning the blonde further. Muku then aimed a kick at Naruto's head, but the blonde, regaining his senses, caught the leg and twisted, earning a scream from Muku, but in response Muku with his free leg, kicked Naruto in the face and kicked him again in the chest, sending him through a building. But Naruto wasn't an easy opponent to defeat, and within the dust cloud created from the blonde colliding into the building, the two met again in a flurry of fists and kicks, trying to outdo the other. Muku then reared a punch at Naruto's face, but the blonde craned his head, just barely dodging the punch as it smashed against the wall of the building, creating cracks in its structures. He then jabbed Muku in the chin, sending him skirting back a bit and through the building again. Muku then tried another punch, but Naruto dodged it and performed a roundhouse kick on Muku's head, which sent him colliding into another building. Muku then flew out of the dust cloud of the building, and performed an upward kick that Naruto dodged and in a burst of speed appeared on Muku's left and elbowed him in the head, dazing him. Muku regained composure of himself and flew at Naruto, where he punched him in the gut and with great agility performed an axe kick on the blonde in a limited space of time. He was about to do another axe kick on the blonde, but Naruto rolled away. "Tarahira, Tiger Palm!" yelled Naruto as he performed a palm strike on Muku's chest that created a shockwave on impact and to cause Muku to vomit up blood and to fall to his knees while clutching his stomach. However, Naruto then kicked Muku away and then reappeared and punched him in the face, then elbowed him in the head, then did an upward kick, and finally, knowing that his opponent was too dazed to fight back, Naruto charged up chakra into his right palm. "Rasengan!" yelled Naruto as he slammed the spinning blue ball of chakra into Muku's stomach, where it was grinding into him and making Muku vomit up more blood as he was violently sent spiraling back into the courtyard and slamming into the Gokuraku no Hako and feeling every bone in his chest breaking on impact. Afterwards he fell to the ground nearly dead. Naruto made his way up to a rooftop overlooking the box and the struggling Muku, who could just barely stand on his feet. "Muku!" yelled Ryuzutsu, who was a bit away from Naruto, who kept his eyes trained on Muku. Luckily for him, because his chakra barely mixed with the senjutsu, it's allowed him to remain in control for the transformation's length. "I won't go back to that dark place. I won't, I want to see the light," yelled Muku as something came over him. He then held his head in his hands as he screamed before his entire body became covered in feathers and his hands were talons as veins bulged around his temples, and he grew in height, shocking everyone who was watching, even the usually calm Naruto, as Muku's spine twisted and contorted where huge mouth appeared on the beast's chest, seemingly missing its head, and now had a long thin tail with a bushy end with bones sticking of its mouth and square teeth. The beast roared as it finished its transformations as two gargantuan wings appeared before settling and standing before the box, calm and composed. "Is that some kind of retarded bird?" said Naruto as he looked at the creature with a calculating gaze. He had never seen such a beast before, and it was an oddity to him that such an odd creature could exist. "What is he?" questioned Moroi from his safe position on a rooftop. The transformed Muku then raised its talon and swooped at the four masked council members, where they were swept up into the air, and their masks broken as a vortex began sucking them into the box. The beastly Naruto and Ryuzutsu then joined Moroi on the same rooftop, where he gasped exasperated that he would be targeted, though Naruto said he would be fine and to stop worrying. The creature then began swooping its talons again, collecting individual prisoners and shoving them into the box the same as the ones before them. "I don't know what that creature is, but through our fight, I knew the Muku you used to know doesn't exist anymore. He's been exposed to hatred and darkness for too long. He's now a thing with a singular purpose in mind," spoke Naruto as his slitted eyes remained on Muku and his scar lines moved with his face. "Then, I guess I failed as a shinobi," said Ryuzutsu as tears fell from her eyes, mourning the loss of her friend and the monster he had become. "Save your tears. It's a simple fact, you cry when you're happy. Crying from failure, you're merely insulting yourself," said Naruto as he made the hand seal for the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, as he created another version of himself ready to combat the monster bird thing. "So you're really going to go at him again? He seems stronger, now that I think about it, and you barely defeated him as you are now. Yabanana Basaka Henkin might not cut it this time unless you have that seal removed," said Moroi as he crossed his arms and smirked at the blonde's confidence. "Shut up, unless you can contribute, don't lecture me," said Naruto as he tensed his right fist where a green aura appeared, tiger, the form of a green tiger, with darker green stripes. "What is it you plan on doing?" questioned Ryuzutsu as she watched her comrade ready to face the beast and the box. It still may not be too late to save your friend if I can destroy the box," said Naruto as he jumped off the roof. And when he made contact with the ground he launched himself forward where he created a shockwave. "Banjin Tarahira, Savage Tiger Palm," yelled Naruto as he thrusted a palm strike, which was encased with the green tiger's aura. When he made contact with the box, a pulsing shockwave was the result as a spiraling streams were swirling around Naruto. But the technique was cancelled as Naruto was pushed back by the cancellation of the technique where he regained his footing. "Not even a scratch," said Naruto as he stared at his failed handiwork. The creature then landed on the box and started speaking in Muku's voice. Perhaps it was Muku or it was the creature, but it didn't matter at the moment as he was nothing more than an obstacle. "Try as you might, it's no use. I tried breaking countless times from the inside, it's indestructible," said Muku with what appeared to be a grin forming across his large mouth. "Listen well. I could understand why you struck down your father, I truly do," replied Naruto, to which Muku lost his grin. "Petty ambitions and selfish desires. This is what leads to the suffering of others, just as my father's selfish wish to bring me back has led to the suffering of the ones I've trapped in the box," responded Muku, explaining his own thoughts on the matter. "We all make mistakes, and yes, we suffer from those mistakes. Even selfish desires can hurt others, but when we make those unforgivable mistakes, we get up and shoulder everything, while trying to undo the damage we had done. Some sins can be forgiven," said Naruto, making Muku pause in his thoughts. Seeing his enemy lower his guard, Naruto jumped towards Muku and tried to punch him, but Muku swung his arm and Naruto disappeared in a plume of smoke, revealing himself to be a clone. The real Naruto appeared behind Muku and tried an axe kick, but the giant bird thing dodged his attempt once again, where Naruto's kick landed against the box, causing a small shockwave. "Save your strength and your words, you won't be able to keep up that form for much longer. None of your attacks can even hurt me, in fact you can't even touch me," said Muku, making Naruto grit his teeth. Moroi was right, Muku was now much faster. The only reason he was able to dodge his attacks now was because of his increased physical parameters, while before they were fairly equal. "Perhaps it's time to call on some aid," thought Naruto as he bit into his arm and drew some blood, where he then slammed his palm against the box where a plume of smoke was seen. "Kuchiyo's no Jutsu, Okamagyo Shiranu, summoning, Wolf Emperor Shiranu." "Okay, what do you want, you little pup? I was busy," yelled the ancient white wolf as he was literally standing on the box with a single paw because of his immense size. "And why am I perched on Theo shit?" yelled Shiranu as he jumped off the box. "What's going on, pup? Why is the Gokuraku no Hako here?" "Wait, Shiranu, you know of this thing?" questioned Naruto, to which Shiranu nodded. "It was the ultimate weapon during the era of Sage of Six Paths aside from chakra itself. Of course I know about it, I saw the destruction it wrought all those years ago, I was there," said Shiranu as he landed on the ground and dodged incoming sharp feathers from Muku with precision and ease. It had been a while since he had to stretch his legs, not since that incident with Madara and the Uchiha clan. Well, Sadari's skulking presence is here also." "Sadari? That's what that thing is called?" questioned Naruto as Shiranu kept on running to avoid the feathers from the great beast. "The Gokuraku no Hako brings forth Sadari, actuates Sadari and ends with Sadari. He captures his enemies and throws and imprisons them in the box. He is the puppet of the box, does its bidding, and he can read the hearts and minds of men and beasts. All known things in this world fear Sadari. Even now, I'm still unaware if it's a jutsu, but once inside, the Gokuraku no Hako turns friends into foes, prey into predators, soldiers into warlords, and man into beast. The box corrupts anything that enters it, becoming a twisted version of their former selves. Even the most noble-hearted cannot stand against the box," said Shiranu as he dodged another barrage of feathers from Muku/Sadari. "You ready, pup? Let's go," yelled Naruto as the great wolf and his summoner ran forward towards Muku/Sadari, as Shiranu prepared a large wind ball in its mouth ready to fire it off at the creature. Shiranu launched the ball, which Muku/Sadari dodged, and Shiranu attempted to bite the creature, which the beast allowed the two to graze past him as the wolf kept on running as he leapt on the buildings to get away from the castle. "Wait, stop, the enemy is back there. Are you fleeing?" "Of course I am, that was the whole idea. I fought this thing once before, don't want to do it again. You're on your own, pup. Only gods will forbid me from anything," said Shiranu as he ran across the fields outside of Huzukijo. "The box is controlling Sadari, it's on a rampage, and will continue to feed others to the box. Once he has imprisoned all inside the box, the situation will have become so dire the damage will remain irreversible. And I will be sleeping at my palace in my home when it's happening," The box has been opened before and whole countries have been unmade from those decisions. Just a moment ago you were complaining about not stretching your legs and now you want to sit on your butt for the rest of eternity," yelled Naruto as he stomped his foot on the great wolf's head. "What happened to the great and mighty Shiranu whose legacy is shaped by his power? I might have infinite patience, but you do not. You're useless bitch." And soon Shiranu stopped in his running as his eyes grew dark. "What did you call me?" questioned Shiranu with a dark aura surrounding him. "You heard me, you're a useless bitch. 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 Bitch," yelled Naruto as he stomped his foot on Shiranu some more. However, this was just a ploy of his to make Shiranu fight, the wolf at its pride, after all, and Naruto wouldn't act in such a way unless he wanted something. "You little punk," yelled Shiranu to Naruto, making the ground shake underneath his wrath. "You once told me, a family is like a pack of wolves. When all play their part, the pack succeeds. When they do not, the pack fails. So please help your family now," pleaded Naruto, which silenced Shiranu as he did remember saying that, and he could remember it was because of his selfishness that the sage cursed him in the first place, and he made a vow not to correct his mistakes again. To help Naruto, his family right here and now, is the only way to atone for his sins. "Very well. We fight together or die alone. In family, there is power. Let's go," roared Shiranu as he turned tail and ran back to the castle. "Once one changes into Satori, they will never change back. We either force him back into the box or we kill the medium. Those are our only two options at the moment. Aid one another and find strength. Thank you for your lessons, father," thought Naruto as he remembered Madara. "I knew a box that could grant wishes had to be nothing but a myth. Exactly, there's no such thing. What would be your wish? Power, riches, peace, or a family of your own, perhaps even the whole world? Whatever the wish, nothing is possible without power, and that's all that comes out of the box. Power. Foul power. Yeah, I understand the circumstances. Leave an apple in a box for 10 years and what comes out is a rotten apple. Here he comes," said Naruto as he could see Muku Satori flying at him, firing off feathers at the two of them. Shiranu then flicked his head, sending the bestial Naruto into the air where they made a hand seal for a jutsu. Katan, Hagenski Yamaden, Fire Release, Ash Rock Mountain Bullet. As he spat out multiple small, black rocks covered in burning heat and flames at Muku/Satori, who dodged all the flaming rocks with ease as they exploded in the sky, and the remaining pieces fell through the air as the bird creature kept flying past where he flew by Naruto as Muku Satori tried to pierce Shiranu with one of its claws, but the great white wolf easily dodged it and tried to bite into it with his great fangs. But Muku Satori sensed the attack and also dodged it, where Shiranu, using his chakra, sharpened its fur and began firing numerous sharp needles that could pierce rock at Satori, who dodged them all with grace and skill. Shiranu then followed up with his attack by trying to bite Satori again by jumping through the air, but Muku Satori dodged it, and when Shiranu landed, all that was created was a dust cloud. One bite was all Shiranu needed to end the puppet of the box. The great wolf had yet to use his full speed and instead wanted to gouge the puppet's speed before laying waste to the creature. Through the dust cloud, Muku/Satori flew forward and grappled with Shiranu as the bird creature sunk its claws into Shiranui's shoulder, where some blood could be seen, but such wounds were nothing to the great wolf emperor, and with his foe's close proximity bit into the puppet, eliciting a screech from Satori, who tried to get away from the wolf only to find that the wolf's bite had a vice-like grip, and Shiranu began continuously biting into Muku Satori, where blood flew through the air. Without any hesitation, Satori pulled away, and with it ripped one of his arms off to get away from the wolf that merely out the remaining body parts from his mouth. Satori then flew through the sky to get back to the box and to lick its wounds. Naruto regrouped with Shiranu as the wolf smirked at his accomplishment. When the puppet returned to its box, it opened its mouth near the entrance of the box, and chakra came flying out and into its maw, where it quickly regenerated the lost flesh and arm and becoming bolstered with even more power than before. Shiranu and Naruto, sensing the change in Muku/Satori's chakra, knew that they had to permanently restrain and kill the medium without letting it near the box. It's devouring the chakra of the victims it has punished in order to rekindle its lost strength. Things will now be even more difficult from here on out, said Shiranu as he braced himself ready to battle the monster yet again. Here he comes, try not to think of anything, he will read your heart and anticipate your actions, said Shiranu as he and Naruto braced for Muku/Satori's attack, where the giant bird fired off multiple feathers, which Naruto and his wolf summon had to defend against. With newfound speed and vigor, the puppet attacked Shiranu, where he stunned the wolf as he fell to his side. The puppet then bit into Shiranui's hide before flinging him back towards the castle via the tail. Though with his new strength Shiranu doubted that even the most powerful of shinobi could defeat Satori now. Moroi meanwhile was watching the whole thing and commenting on how things just took a disastrous turn. He had to move as a white wolf, the size of the Hokage mountain was hurtling towards him. Shiranu then crashed into the structures of the castle where a giant dust cloud was created. Naruto chased after his friend and hoped a little that he would be alright with Muku Satori flying overhead. Naruto landed on a roof of a building in the castle and saw that Shiranu was battered and bruised from the attack. "Shiranu, are you injured?" yelled Naruto towards his summons, who merely nodded though, flinched a little in pain. Apparently Satori's strength and power had increased far more than expected. Satori then circled around in the air and stabbed Shiranu in the shoulder with one of its claws, earning a wounded howl from the Wolf Emperor, where blood exploded from the wound. Shiranu in response charged up wind chakra in his mouth and fired off a ball, to which Muku Satori dodged it again with that special sensory of his, who then sent his tail towards the wolf that jumped away to avoid any more injury and tried to sink his fangs into the puppet once again, only to be met with the same result. In response the puppet shot hardened feathers towards Shiranu, who rolled and away dodged them. "He's still reading my thoughts and every move," said the wolf chieftain as he was joined by Naruto and narrowed his eyes and limped a little from the wound on his side. "Are you scared? Disappointing, isn't it, that you, having mastered Ubanana Basaka, Penkin doesn't free you from fear?" said Muku Satori as his words seemed to break something in Naruto. As the blonde held up his hands to his face, just what kind of fear could he be talking about? "Your fear is delectable. You don't fear me, you don't fear dying. You fear something else, something much more savage than you or me. You fear yourself. And you fear that which you thought was lost." Shiranu then attacked again, trying to bite into Satori. "Don't listen to him, pup," roared Shiranu, to which Naruto nodded as he somehow felt that the puppet's words were somehow true. Naruto then jumped into the air and made multiple shadow clones around him ready to launch an attack on the puppet. But at that time, his ears returned to normal, his canines returned to their original appearance, his manic hair became more calm, his eye returned to normal as his pupils became round again, his black sclera disappeared and his irises became blue once again, while the scar-like X disappeared, with Naruto reverting to his base form and the Tenro activating on his chest, restricting him from using his chakra. He then fell out of the sky with Shiranu screaming his nickname at him. "No. Not now," said Naruto as he could barely lift himself up from the amount of energy the transformation drained from him as every usage of the technique exhausts the user. "Now you can die," yelled Muku as from his mouth he prepared a large red ball that would destroy Naruto with ease. Naruto merely braced himself as he couldn't use his Mangekyo powers, nor was he fast enough to get out of the way. However, he then felt a shadow hovering over him, an explosion and a cry of pain. He looked up to see Shiranu had taken the brunt of the attack for Naruto and was severely wounded. "Shiranu!" yelled Naruto as the wolf tried to keep himself standing lest to crush Naruto. "Run with the pack," was all Shiranu said as he disappeared in a plume of smoke, leaving Naruto defenseless. Muku followed up his attack by raising his arms and preparing another of the orbs, where he launched it at Naruto again, who merely saw his life flash before his eyes, and the one thought he had on his mind. "I'm sorry, Conan," thought Naruto, but then something smacked him out of the with such force that it sent him crashing a building in the castle as the explosion went off, and all that could be seen was dust. So there he was sitting on the ground with bricks and rubble on his form as he stared dumbfounded at what just happened before a brick landed on his head. Ow. From the dust cloud large octopus tentacles could be seen flying around. "I'm sorry for Killer Bee's raps, I can't rap for shit." "Yo. You fool, that ain't cool. You call that a box? I'll show you how to box. Stand still, shorty, and take one on the chops." "Kaw pow," yelled a voice as a massive fist emerged from the cloud of dust and punched Muku Satori away and sent him crashing into the castle grounds. "That wolf ain't having a good day. You and me can finally play. Out the way, that Akatsuki joker. You and me can gamble like we're playing poker." "Can't believe the Akatsuki have gotten involved in this. The situation was worse than we imagined," said a voice, where it was revealed to be the Godame Hokage Tsunade Senju along with chosen members of Konoha Shinobi, including Sakura Haruno, who had taken leave from the capital to join the fight. Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka and his trusty companion Akamaru, Kurena Yui Asuma Sarutobi, Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akimichi, Mighty Guy, Neji Hyuga and Tenten. Along with Kakashi Hatake, his former comrade Tenzo, along with Shizune Drea and his disciple Kanahamaru Sarutobi. But we'll deal with Ryu Yokaze later. Just then Moroi appeared next to Killer Bee with a smile on his face. "Yo, my homeboy, Moroi," said Killer Bee as he bumped fists with Moroi, who reciprocated the action. "My mission to keep an eye on the box has been alright. I knew I had to be careful once Yokkai's and Hoshigaki arrived. And boy, Yokkei sure is a monster. Unfortunately, I was unable to steal the box as I can't lug that thing all the way back to Kumo," said Moroi, to which everyone understood. "But I also have something else to report. Yokkai's and Moi talked a little while I was here, and they kept mentioning someone by the name of Takurufu, whoever that is. Ring any bells?" Killer Bee merely shook his ox head while Tsunade, Kakashi and Drea's eyes widened immensely in horror. Just how did those two know who Takurufu was? More importantly, how did Yokkai's know who Takurufu was? This is bad. That information is beyond classified, even greater than Naruto's heritage. Takurufu was privy to all of Root's secrets, all of the sins they committed. If anyone ever discovered so secrets hidden in his lost journal, war would be inevitable. "Hate to interrupt, but that thing's coming back," said Tenzo as he pointed towards the giant bird thing. "Stop your squawking and bring it on, clown. Gonna shut you up and then shut that box down. Lock you up and throw away the key. Bury you in the deep blue sea. I float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. 'Cause I'm the Hachibai," yelled Killer Bee as he had his tentacles surge towards Muku Satori, who dodged them all and shot sharpened feathers at the Hachibai, who swatted the feathers away. "That's whack. You're a pain, you know that." "It dodged every one of his attacks," said Sakura, surprised at what she saw. "We'll just have to attack it simultaneously until Shikamaru can think up a strategy," said Asuma as he was smoking on his cigarette. "If I can immobilize him with Cageman no Jutsu, shadow imitation technique, he should be easy to defeat afterwards. Just keep his attention on the attacks and I'll handle the rest," said the Nara clan heir as he jumped off the roof and prepared himself. "You heard Shikamaru. Just attack him in a flurry," ordered Tsunade as all the Konoha shinobi prepared themselves for an assault as Muku Satori continued to throw people in the box, and just as he was about to throw in another batch, he was stopped by Ryuzutsu, who appeared before him, surprising him, to which Shikamaru noticed it. Killer Bee, taking the initiative, attacked the puppet with a fist that slammed against the ground, to which the puppet dodged the attack. Konohamaru, taking advantage of the distraction, went through hand seals, Katan, Hazekasha, fire release, ash pile burning, as he spewed out countless ash and clicked his teeth where the ash allied into flames, but Satori lazily brushed his hand and dispersed the flames with ease. This allowed Sakura the time to get above her opponent and tried to punch him, but failed again as Satori dodged their efforts. Tenten jumped in the air and unsealed a giant spiked ball, to which she threw it down atop Muku, who was about to step to the side, but the giant ball suddenly exploded in a plume of smoke and revealed Might Guy's form, ready to do an axe kick on the giant bird thing that just stepped to the side. Tenzo performed a seal where his entire arm became wood and surged forward as multiple bare trees appeared and grew in number. Again, like before, Muku stepped to the side as the trees were about to hit him, but below the trees and above he demon was Kakashi, Drea and Asuma. Kakashi was using Raikiri, Drea Rasengan, and Asuma was channeling wind chakra into his two trench knives, and all three attacked at the same time, but like before all the other times, they missed as Satori flew away. The prisoners meanwhile were trying to escape, where they somehow found a log and battered it against the castle's door too, which it burst open, and they claimed freedom, but they didn't take more than a few steps before some of them burst into flames, leading them to conclude that the Tenro was still active, to which they flew back into the castle. Naruto from his wounded position could feel the dying chakras through his sensory abilities, and this the Tenro was still active. That meant only one thing. Moi was still alive. As Satori launched more feathers at the shinobi, they were blocked by Tenten's, the supposed seal master's kunai. Kurena did what she could to place the foe under a genjutsu, but it was to no use as the creature was somehow immune to genjutsu. Hinata and Neji meanwhile were defending others, with their signature Hyuga clan techniques, the Kaiten, revolving heaven. Choji ate a pill which increased his size to tremendous heights, while Ino couldn't exchange minds with the puppet, as it was too dangerous, and the fact that it was moving all over the place, not allowing Shikamaru any time to ensnare it. Kiba and Akamaru were spinning in the air, trying to shred their opponent, but Satori swatted them out of the air as Choji came rolling like thunder towards the bird thing. When Choji chased after Muku in the air, the puppet just kicked the rolling ball back to the ground, where he landed with a crash. "You're all fools, the only two that could defeat me are powerless now," said Muku, referencing Shiranu and Naruto. "That's not Muku." "It's not," said Ryuzutsu as she watched all the carnage happening before her eyes. "Don't be fooled. That isn't Muku." "No, Muku is dead," said Ryuzutsu. Sharp feathers fell all around her. "Kusagakuer. Must resolve the mistakes of Kusagakuer," where she made seals to help combat Muku. However, the Tenryuan began to burn her though she pressed on with her jutsu. Katan, Unadoro! Yelled Ryuzitsu as multiple fiery demon heads appeared all around her and began swarming around Muku, with some of the heads actually landing hits on the bird creature, but also burning some of the castle. Ryuzitsu herself was consumed by flames and would have died if it wasn't for the timely arrival of Moroi, who doused her with a water jutsu. You crazy. You're marked with the Tenro. Just stop him. Please. Ryu. As Naruto was making his way to the hole in the wall, he crashed in, holding his side, which had been hurt when Killer Bee swatted him away, probably just to kill him later, or maybe he was collateral damage. Didn't matter, he was reflecting on Muku's words. Did he fear himself? Just what was there to fear? He didn't understand what could have forced him to join Root, as he felt what Mui and Muku said was somehow connected. And he also didn't notice that one of his curse seals were pulsing. Is fear an instinct? Naruto then bit into his arm and made the seal for the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, and then clapped his hands together. I don't fight alone. Family is like a pack, they're all counting on me. Madara, Shiranu, and Konan, they are here with me. They will always be with me, they give me strength. Thought Naruto as he recounted Shiranui's words as a bright light started cracking through his fingers. They are my fire. Muku continued fighting against Konoha's forces, effortlessly dodging attacks and Killer Bee's tentacles. With his strength and reflexes, he would soon defeat the shinobi, and he knew of their plan to stop him. Victory was in his grasp. Just as he was about to attack Killer Bee, something struck him, sending him flying into the outer walls of the castle. When Muku emerged from the dust and rubble, he could Naruto standing atop the box which trapped him for so long. In fact, Muku barely even recognized the man in front of him, his appearance was just so different. Standing on the box appeared to be a man in his mid-20s with a muscular, but lean form, with a scar on his left pectoral, over his heart that looked like a lightning bolt arcing outwards. The person was also taller than the blonde-haired man he had fought, at least half a head. But the main indicator that this was the same opponent was gone. The golden blonde hair that rivaled the sun was gone, replaced with spiky, light smoky gray hair that looked wild and manic, resembling a lion's mane. His ears remained slightly pointed and his canines were the same as the previous transformation. His eyes were different, there was no black sclera and the irises were red with a unique pattern in them, but still otherwise slitted like before. But the biggest change that Muku could see was all over his body. He had crimson markings that looked like branches on every part of his body. On his forehead he had a spiraling magatama, facing upwards, upheld by two markings surrounding the magatama and facing upwards. Below his eyes he had two downward, facing crimson claw-like markings arranged in three, and on his chin and neck he had a U-like marking connected to a branching outline running down, his neck becoming more branching outlines on his chest and arms. But the strangest thing, he didn't sense any fear from the man in front of him, none at all. He couldn't even sense the chakra the gray-haired man was sending into both of his eyes. Kamionaneo Shinto, Kamionaneo, way of the gods, said Naruto as he reared his fist, but when he punched his hand, half of his arm disappeared in a flash, consumed by a red portal, tinged with black. Before Muku even knew what hit him, a fist appeared right in front of him from a red portal tinged in black, a fist half his size that literally pummeled him into the ground. Muku tried to get back up only to find another fist coming out of a portal before a foot stomped him in the ground. Muku got off the ground and flew up in the air. He could sense the attacks coming, but yet somehow he couldn't dodge them. Just what was happening? But even in the air, he couldn't escape from Naruto's attack, as when Naruto punched the air, his arm was swallowed up by the red portal, tinged in black. Halfway up his arm, and then again a portal of the same colors appeared above Muku's satiri, and where he was punched back to the ground again, and was assaulted with another punch. Naruto had to end this now with what limited time he had now, unlike the previous transformation which lasted for a couple of minutes. Yabanana Basaka Henkin level 2 will only last for less than 4 minutes, it consumed more power, and the blonde was already tired from using the previous transformation and his body had yet to become accustomed to the new surge of power. But the major problem, like before, his chakra hasn't mixed properly with the senjutsu in his body, thus debilitating his potential. But unlike before, he has no control over himself except for speech. He was now just a rabid animal. Wait, how can he suddenly hit him? And what is that power? It's like his fists are traveling through dimensions, said Shikamaru as he observed the smoky-haired man. It's Yokaze, I know it, said Kiba as he clenched his fist and stared at the back of Shino and Lee's murderer. What's going on? What are those markings on his body? And didn't he have blonde hair? Questioned Sinead as she stared at the scene. Kanehamaru meanwhile clutched his head as he was hit by a wave of pain originating from an unknown location. It felt like someone had just cleaved his skull in two. This had happened before, and he didn't know what was the cause, only that it somehow involved Ryuyoke's. Jiraiya looked down upon his student and noticed him clutching his head, and he found it odd at how fast the pain washed over him and Yokaza's recent resurgence in the battle. Muku, who had been pummeled to the ground, got off his feet and fired feathers at Naruto, and using his now enhanced speed, dodged all the feathers, took cover on a roof with Muku Satori flying overhead and landing on the box. You probably can't understand what I'm saying with that now primitive mind of yours, but can you imagine what it's like to be trapped in this box? There's no exit, you can't break it open. You're inside darkness with one overpowering feeling swirling around you. It's big and black, just as darkness is, and it seeps into every cell in your body. That feeling honed me, purified me, all the emotions that once tormented me grew fainter and fainter, and when I killed my father with my own hands, that vanished completely. I now feel nothing. I'm no longer bound and restrained by anything, not even emotions. I'm sure you can understand that, since you have that same thing look on your face and in your eyes. It's wonderful, isn't it? Fear, that's the one emotion that remained. My own fear of coming out of the box, the fear in the hearts of those who attack me. You see, it's not people's minds I read their fears, and that's why I understand what's happened. You have no fear in you now, you've given up your mind to your inner nature, that of a beast. Monologued Muku to the animal that was Naruto, who, like Muku said, didn't understand or didn't acre as his mind was overcome by the beast inside. Naruto then flew off the roof and used Shinto once more as the same dark portal engulfed his arm, and when he punched forward, a portal appeared behind Muku and landed an attack on his back, making the puppet scream in agony at the feeling of his bones breaking from the inside. The bird thing landed on the ground just as Naruto found his way onto its back, where the now dark gray-haired man grasped both of the bird's wing and violently ripped them off with his own hands, blood flying everywhere and screeches filling the air. Even some of the Konoha shinobi were taken back by the savagery. As Muku was screeching at the top of his lungs, Naruto jumped down and broke one of the bird's bones, jutting from the mouth, and then proceeded to stab the bone through Muku/Satori's back, making it scream in even more pain. It then raised its talon and swatted Naruto away, where he crashed on the other side of the castle. However, nothing would hurt him now, and he just raced back towards Muku, where he landed a bit away from the bird thing. By dying, my father gave me strength without doubt. I can see something similar in Yo minus. However, he was interrupted from speaking further when Naruto kicked him in the side, sending him to the ground. Without even hesitating for a second, Naruto, with a quick movement of the arm, ripped off Muku's arm, even more blood spilling everywhere. He couldn't play around with his prey this time. He only had a few more seconds to stay in the form, otherwise Muku would kill him. Naruto then jumped away and landed atop the box and prepared chakra in his eyes, a certain death jutsu, unique to his eyes, the second most powerful jutsu in the world and the most powerful jutsu in his arsenal. The seventh and final Kamionaneo. Kamionaneo, K-, however, he was unable to finish the jutsu as the crimson markings all around his form dissipated, leaving just skin, while his slitted eyes and the Sharingan disappeared. No, it couldn't end like this. He had run out of time. The amount of time he was in Yabanana Basaka Enkin was even shorter than he imagined, 2 minutes, that was it, and all because of the stupid seal on his chest, restricting his chakra and stopping it from properly molding Shurinui's Senjutsu chakra within with his own chakra, creating his own new Senjutsu chakra. Damn it, said Naruto, and quickly small, black cracks began to spread all across his form, and they were slowly growing in size as minor pain swept over him, and soon exhaustion was setting in. He couldn't move his body, it refused to. His ears returned to normal, his canines became as they were before, however his hair remained the same smoky gray, and his eyes were still amber-colored, while his hair was still wild-looking. Well, you really are the strongest person I have ever faced. You're an adversary worthy of respect. But it seems your flames have finally died out. You can't enter that form again unless you want to kill yourself, and even then it would still take some time for you to summon that wolf Senjutsu chakra to aid you. You're just like my father, believing that a simple act of kindness can forgive years of condemnation, spoke Muku as he got off the ground. You can hate your father as much as you want, curse his name and anything related to him. However, you're not blind to pain. You wish for it, you embrace it, you thrive in it. You've killed all the bonds you had, and the very sound of your name now falls on deaf ears. There is no place in your heart the need to protect something precious to you. But yet, even I can tell that all those things are false. You want all the things you had before, and you believe you can't have them anymore, spoke Naruto, drawing on some self-experience. You really don't get it. You claim to understand me, but yet I feel no conviction in your words, almost like you're saying this on a whim. All those things you claim about me being false. You couldn't be more wrong. It sounds more like a childish sentiment to me than anything. It's like the villages continuing to pacify us and keeping the weak under their thumbs. If you cut off those ties that bind you, free yourself from the burdens of this world and the people around you, then you can soar as high as I have. But your words don't matter to me anymore. Instead of throwing you in the box, I'll just kill you instead," said Muku as he raised his remaining arm ready to pierce Naruto as it came rocketing before him. Naruto merely heard his words and remembered something Madara told him. Flashback. "Hey old goat," said Naruto as he was lying on his bed, which made Madara's eyebrow tick at the young man. He hated that nickname above all else, but couldn't help but smile at such a name, although he was tempted to walk over and slap his student across the back of the head for killing him such a name. "You sometimes mention your strength and how there has never been an Uchiha to date to ever match you in combat. How did you become so strong?" "Well, I know you trained a lot, but still, was there another factor?" said Naruto as he stared up at the dark roof as white zetsus popped out of the ground to observe the answer. "You could say that. Though it would really depend whether or not you found it stupid," replied Madara as he leaned back against his root throne as he closed his sole visible eye in concentration. "I used to believe in ghosts. I thought you were the Shinigami when I first saw you. How much stupider can such a thing be?" responded Naruto, making Madara sigh a little. He was a little apprehensive to say anything about it, but it didn't hurt to just tell the boy. "My brother. He was everything to me, the person I loved most. We were inseparable, both on the battlefield and off. All my other brothers were killed by the Senju clan, before they could even know the taste of sake on the lips. Izuna and I were the only ones left. He was my fire, my drive to become stronger and to protect what was precious to me. I loved Izuna, even more than I loved myself, my clan. When he died, slain at the hands of Tobirama Senju, my will to protect him became my will to protect the clan. I had found a new fire. It was because of him that my strength flourished. But when my clan turned against me, my fire had died out. When my village turned against me, my will was broken. Perhaps that is why I lost to Hashirama. Perhaps that is why I could never get any stronger. When I cut my bonds to the people important to me, that is when I lost my strength. I abandoned them, and that is why I couldn't get any stronger. Without bonds or the need to protect anything, all you will be is a husk," said Madara with a melancholy expression on his face, thinking about his beloved younger brother. "You know, old goat," said Naruto with a smiling stretching itself across his face, making Madara look up at him with his dead eyes. "I agree with you." Flashback end. Naruto watched as Muku's claw came closer and closer, where Naruto also saw a shadow appearing before him. Before he was pierced by the claw, cutting deep into his flesh and making his blood spill across the ground. He could also feel the splotches of blood that were not his own as Ryuzutsu's blood splashed against him as she too was impaled by her best friend. As Naruto stared at the back of Ryuzutsu's head, he coughed up blood at what happened, and the black smoldering cracks along his body became bigger. Muku grinned at what happened and hefted his remaining arm and threw the two bleeding bodies off him, where Naruto and Ryuzutsu landed harshly on the ground. Naruto looked over to Ryuzutsu and saw that her form was unmoving. He couldn't even see her breathe, but he could tell that she was still alive, albeit barely, as he could sense her chakra. He then got up on his knees as he clutched bleeding wound on his stomach, as if it was the most precious thing in the world to him. Muku merely frowned at Naruto and his unwavering resolve to stay alive. "You don't know when to die. You have 2 feet in the grave already. Your resolve to live is admirable but foolish. What is worth living for that you would spit in the face of death?" said Muku as he craned his head a little at the sight and truly wondered just what pushed his opponent to get up at every turn. "Something you may never understand," said Naruto, but that answer didn't please Muku, only angered him further as the wounded bird creature opened its mouth ready to fire a large chakra ball at Naruto, which would surely kill him. The puppet of the box then launched the giant red ball on some of the Konoha shinobi, such as Kiba and Kurenoha, hoping it would kill him. However, before all of their eyes, a large, black portal appeared from nothingness and swallowed the massive ball of chakra, where an explosion was then sent off a bit away from the castle, where a large dust cloud could be seen. Then a cloaked shadow appeared before, wearing the same black cloak that he had before, standing upright and facing the demon. The cloaked person then lifted their hand and allowed a fearless, blue butterfly to land on their finger before smiling as it flew off. "You know, I've just realized, I can't stand watching you be pathetic and getting your butt kicked. Also," said the person as they turned around and slapped Naruto in the face, where they left an impressive red handprint, to which everyone around them sweat dropped at the scene, even Muku. "That's for injecting the you-know-what Shiranui's blood into me. Luckily Shiranu has taken a liking to me. He even taught me how to use Koinyu's powers, or should I say your powers. Huh, your hair is different," said the person as they knelt down and took a strand of Naruto's hair between their fingers and rolled it around, as if a cat had found a toy. Naruto could only smile as his hopes had been proven true. Conan was alive and well right in front of him. She was currently wearing the black cloak he gave her to hide herself from others. Besides that, her appearance had only changed slightly. The bun in her hair was gone, allowing more of her luscious blue hair to cascade down her face and neck. The origami flower was also gone, but one thing remained, was the blue, scaled flower hair clips he gave. Other than that, she was the same. He could only guess that she had foregone some of the earlier noted factors as a result of training, or her hair had become too wild. Your eyes are also different. But your chakra still feels the same, said Conan with a smile on her face, knowing that her friend was well and truly fine, as she removed her fingers from Naruto's hair, causing him to smile lightly at her. You know, you have excellent timing, complimented Naruto as Conan got up on her own 2 feet. Just part of my charm. Shiranu sent me, he was worried for you, she said as she shrugged her shoulders with a smirk on her face. But, what is that thing? She said as she pointed at the Muku, who screeched in response. It's a long story, and if I was to explain its history I might just bore the readers. Given the fact that it has 2 stubs on its back and missing one of its arms, you obviously picked a fight with something you couldn't defeat, said Conan, earning an exasperated sigh from the blonde. It almost sounds like you're insulting me. Or you just love rubbing salt in my wounds, said Naruto, to which Conan didn't respond, as she noticed the black cracks around his form, growing larger and smoldering more. You use level 2. You could have killed yourself, yelled Conan, to which Naruto cringed a little at her words. I had it completely under control, said Naruto as he smiled at his partner. You might not be able to defeat him yourself, but you should be a worthy distraction. Distraction, am I? Well, I guess you could say that, since you can't take your eyes off me, said Conan with a smirk and a bit of a sassy attitude, making Naruto widen his eyes at her change. Guess her power wasn't the only thing that changed. She must be enjoying every minute of her teasing, even though she was right. Naruto, then bracing himself, flexed his left arm as he cut a kunai deep into his skin, drawing a kanji on his right arm that would stave off the coming effects of the transformation for a short while, as blood and sweat dripped down his arm. He had written the kanji for restrain on his left bicep, as the blood from the wound leaked from the opening in his arm, and the black cracks along his form began slowing down in pace. Conan only then noticed the massive hole in his stomach, and she thought it would be life-threatening. But then her partner replied that it was a flesh wound. Flesh wound, yeah right. Does anyone have spare chakra? Yelled Naruto to the group of Konoha nin. If the chakra came from an external source, the seal won't actively block its use, and he didn't have much left from the fact that his chakra was sued to open the box. He was surprised that the one who raised his arm in response was Konohamaru. Do you know how to transfer your chakra to others? Said Naruto as Konohamaru nodded, although he would admit he hadn't fully perfected it. I'll handle that thing from here on, while you complete whatever it is you're planning, said Conan as she walked forward towards Muku, who screeched at her. What do you have to offer that he couldn't, little girl? Said Muku as the hooded Conan merely stared at him before he was taken back by her eyes. They were red with 3 tomo in them. A pair of dull red Sharingan. However, her eyes appeared to be glazed over, as the red were dulled and less vibrant than those of normal Sharingan. Her eye then shifted to a new pattern. One of 3 sides originating at the pupil, the pattern of Naruto's main Hyo Sharingan, though like before they were dulled and glazed over. The reason for this is because Naruto sealed a wolf with his eyes within her. Since she's become a summoner for the wolves, she now has access its powers for a short amount of time, and be able to use Kamiona, though much weaker in comparison to Naruto's own. That why the colors were less vibrant, and they looked glazed over. She then felt a hand on her shoulder, filling her with energy. You'll need that, said Naruto as he removed his hand just as Konohamaru arrived at their position. Conan then jumped away and then faced Muku with an impassive gaze. The wind started to pick up around her as she underwent a transformation. Her stunning blue hair became a deep silver, her pupils became slitted and her irises were violet, her ears became slightly pointed and so were her canines, while her hair became more wild, almost covering her face, and scarlet markings began spreading across her body, though only the markings on her face were visible, the same ones Naruto had. She had learnt Yabanana Basaka Henkin level 2. And needless to say, Naruto was impressed. She must have been training for days, maybe hours, at the wolf's forest. She then channeled chakra into her left eye and performed a jutsu. Kamiona Neo, Chikyu Tentao no Ibiki, Kamiona Neo, earth-reducing breath of heaven, said Konan as she charged at Muku, who tried to swipe at her with his remaining arm only for her to front flip over the puppet, leaving him confused at what she was doing. So, is dodging all you're really good at? Stated Muku with a grin. I didn't dodge anything, hissed Conan as Muku was then cut from all sides from an unknown force, as even more blood dripped everywhere, and with Muku screaming in pain, as he fell to his knees and being unable to fly because Naruto ripped off his wings, he had lost most of his agility. He then looked up at Conan to see Ash spiraling around her before, forming a single wing at her back that was as large as her. She then flew back at Muku with her Ash wing, enabling her to literally fly. Muku raised his arm as he blocked Kanan's attack as her silver hair whipped her face, and her face had a notable snarl, marring its features. This thing before her hurt one of her friends. She would never forgive anyone for doing such a thing to her. She'd kill them, and that was a certainty. She then channeled chakra into her right eye. Peyton, Fujin, said Conan as her ash wing hardened and began fire. Multiple shards of coalesced ash at Muku, who couldn't get away from an attack as his body was literally sawed by the ash. He didn't know such people were capable of the kind of power, first that blonde, now gray-haired man and this silver-haired woman with the strange markings. Naruto watched the whole thing transpire. He didn't use his ash at first as Muku was faster than the ash, making it near impossible to attack him, but he couldn't allow anyone to pick up on the major flaw of all the Kamiona Neo jutsu. You could only use a single jutsu at a time unless you were to use the third power Kamiona Neo, Tenrai Yanajai Seijun, Divine Willow's Purity, which created absolute perfect clones of the user in appearance, personality and power. However, the third power was incredibly draining when used recklessly. Okay kid, ready your chakra, said Naruto to Konohamaru, who was clutching his head as it felt like multiple kunai were stabbing into his brain. Whatever it was, it felt like something was trying to return to its original place, something that was lost. This had happened to him before, and yet no matter what came into his mind, no answer was good enough. Without saying anything, Konohamaru touched Naruto's arm and began channeling his chakra into him. However, something unexpected happened. The chakra that Naruto was being fed felt like nothing he had ever felt before. It was strange, as he felt like this chakra was literally making him stronger rather than giving your chakra for someone else to use, which was the main usage of the technique. This chakra, it felt like he could rip mountains in half, create tsunamis with a clap, and bring down fire on the world. Whatever made Konohamaru's chakra so potent, Naruto knew that Konohamaru's chakra would be stronger than his. But he couldn't scrape off the feeling on why it felt familiar, as if it was his own. Back to the fight with Muku and Conan. The now silver-haired woman had landed on a roof of a building where Muku clapped his hand on it, trying to hit the bug buzzing around him. He then saw Conan flipping over him with her ash wing and swiped at her again with his talon, only for her to block it with her ash wing, and attempted a counter-attack on the puppet, only for him to also block it with his talon, but suffered some cuts when he blocked it. Muku then jumped away to another section of the castle with Conan chasing after him. He found himself backed up against a wall as he saw the flying angel trying to skewer him with her wing. Her wing then impaled the wall behind him as he dodged her attack, only for her to scrape the wing against the wall, trying to sever him in half, to which he desperately blocked with his talon, only to be buffeted to the ground from the force in her attacks. Muku picked himself up from the attack, standing back on his own 2 feet. However, he couldn't react fast enough to evade Kanan's final attack, which completely severed his left leg as she flew by using her ash wing. Muku, bird-like form, screamed in pain at what was happening. He was about to return to the box to retrieve more power, so to save himself. However, today was his end. Naruto channeled chakra into his eyes using Konohamaru's chakra, to which he gave him more than enough to pull off one final jutsu. Kamiona Neo Shinto, yelled Naruto as he thrusted his left arm, where it was consumed by a red portal with a black tint, where another portal, even larger than his own hand, appeared above Muku, grabbing him. Naruto then thrusted his right arm as the same thing happened, as he held Muku in his grip as he screeched at having all his bones crushed by the large arms. Naruto then spread out his arms, mirroring a ripping motion, and the 2 arms holding on to Muku literally ripped him in half, causing all manner of blood, guts and entrails to fall over the place as all went silent as the 2 halves of Satori fell to the ground, with everyone shocked at the level of violence. Naruto then dropped to his knees as he saw that all the feathers began dissipating into dust, and the ripped body of Satori soon disappeared, replaced with an intact Muku lying on the ground with blood dripping from his mouth and staring into the sky with dead eyes. Father, said Muku as he lay there, battered and defeated. Ryuzutsu also pushed herself off the ground, regaining some of her strength. Ryuzutsu, I am sorry, father. His words, they cut deep. He then made hand seals, ready for a jutsu, making Naruto and Conan tense up. Katan, Unadoro! Yelled Muku as he set himself on fire, ending his life and stopping the suffering of others. I'm sorry I didn't keep my promise to you. I wish I could have. I wish I could have. I wish I could have lived with you and father, together in peace. And as he said those words, fire quickly rose up and flew for the box, buffeting the winds and making Ryuzutsu's bandana fly off her head. With Satori being forced back into the box as the demonic faces started glowing in response. Before closing. And Ryuzutsu's bandana dropping into a pool of Miui's blood. Naruto, regaining some of his strength, walked over to Miui's unmoving position as the lord of the castle laid on the ground with his blood pooling over the place. Naruto then clutched the man in his arms, giving him some comfort as Mui opened his eyes to be greeted with Naruto's face and smoky gray hair. You're alive. And Muku? Questioned Mui as he stared into Naruto's eyes as tears gathered at the corners of his eyelids. I'm sorry, he's gone. But in his final moments, he forgave you. And expressed his desire to be with you forever. Said Naruto with a smile, causing Mui to smile in response as some blood leaked out of his mouth. Happy to know that his son didn't die hating him. The Tenro isn't just an imprisonment jutsu. Is it? Shinobi who can't mold their chakra aren't likely to create conflict. That was your true goal. Trying to find a way for people to live with each other in harmony. We both believed that Muku could never be human again, but look how wrong we were. I can still remember you saying that we were the same. If that's true, you should know what I'm thinking about. I was inspired by you. No matter what happened, you always sought peace in your creations. But the things made for peace were instead abused for selfish reasons. The people you trusted betrayed you, left the person you loved to die alone. I questioned why such conflict existed, said Mui as he could feel his life escaping him. I do not have the answers you seek, but I know where to find them. Closer, said Mui as Naruto craned his head closer to Mui as the man whispered in his ear, and what he heard made him nod as he again looked back down on Mui. A- also. Kyoku is. But those were Mui's final words as the life seen in his eyes departed, and his body slumped. As a last sign of respect, Naruto closed Mui's eyes and laid his body to rest on the ground. The Tenro soon disappeared from Naruto's body, allowing him to use his chakra. What left of it, he could only make a space-time portal. He had to give Muku respect, no one had pushed him as far as he did. Naruto's eyes then shifted towards Ryuzutsu, who had fallen back to the ground with Sakura Haruno, desperately trying to heal her. He also saw Konan with her hood still up, and the Sharingan disappearing from her eyes as well as the markings, and his own life force was stopping the painful black cracks from appearing on her body. Nodding at Konan, Naruto walked up to Ryuzutsu but was met with resistance as some of the Konoha shinobi blocked his way, namely Kurena and Tenzo. I can save her, said Naruto as his breathing became more labored, and he knew what that meant. Like you care. All you have done is minus, yelled Kiba, and he was interrupted by Konan, who had her face covered by the hood. Good, he did all of the work, you came in at the last minute. And even then you couldn't even touch that bird thing. He just killed it, said Konan, making Kiba shut up and hold in his pride. Begrudgingly the Konoha shinobi allowed Naruto and Konan through where they hovered over the dying Ryuzutsu. Fortunately Naruto still had time to save her, unlike Mui. Do you think you can carry her? Questioned Naruto as he gazed at Konan, who still had silver hair and violet eyes, to which she nodded. Also the physical traits they picked up from using the second level of beast mode would disappear in time, possibly a day, maybe 2. Naruto then placed his front 2 fingers on Ryuzutsu's forehead, where he flowed some of his very own life force into Ryuzutsu. He had done the same to Konan when he grabbed her shoulder, which is why she wasn't suffering from the grievous effects of beast mode level 2 unlike him. In 3 seconds, the gaping hole on Ryuzutsu's stomach disappeared and what was left was unblemished skin, as if there was no wound to begin with, just traces of blood. The shinobi who were watching awed at the scene never had a medical ninjutsu so powerful ever existed before, to be able to regenerate missing organs, even though technically it wasn't a jutsu. However, Ryuzutsu remained unconscious. Naruto then got up and nearly fell over from giving up some of his life force and decreasing his lifespan just to save another. But then, the black cracks along his form spread throughout his body so quickly that he was overcome with the pain of the technique. The blood seal he placed on himself to halt the effects had worn off, and now, he was experiencing the greatest pain imaginable. It felt like he was being stabbed all over and that his blood was fire. He couldn't use his life force at the time because it required utmost focus, and he couldn't focus while in the pain he was. He stumbled backwards trying not to fall over, however one of the shinobi seeing this immediately took advantage of the situation and kicked Naruto in the chin, who was unable to fight back because he had his chakra drained by the box and the effects of beast mode were prevalent. The shinobi who had kicked Naruto was Kiba, and he continued to punch and pound Naruto in anger for what he did to Shino and Lee. He was so overcome with rage that he didn't care what Ryu just did, so long as he got some enjoyment out of punishing him. Unfortunately, Kiba's attacks only increased Naruto's pain tenfold. "This is what you deserved, you scum. You don't deserve to live," yelled Kiba as he continued his assault on Naruto while the other shinobi didn't lift a finger. Very few actually cringed from what they were seeing, Tsunade, Sakura and Hinata being the notable ones. Kiba was so caught in his attacking Naruto that he didn't notice the shadow flying towards him. The shadow was so fast that it literally came swooping down as a foot grazed by Kiba's face. When I mean grazed by, I actually mean that the attack was so swift and powerful that it cut Kiba's cheek. "Damn, I missed. I was supposed to take your head off," said Konan in mid-flight as stood next to the downed Naruto, who was barely trying to stop himself from screaming like a wounded animal. Kiba gritted his teeth at the feeling of blood running down his cheek. "Bitch. Get out of the way," yelled Kiba with feral instincts coming over him while Konan still kept her hood lowered. "Kiba. Let them go," yelled Sakura, pleading to her friend not to continue while the others remained silent. "It's disgraceful as a shinobi to punish another who can't fight back. He's been kind enough to show us that mercy," said Sakura as she read the reports, and Yokes didn't seem the type to do such a thing. Sakura then got off the ground and started walking towards Naruto and Konan and said now silver-haired woman tensed up at her approach. "I just want to heal him. If I can't I can lessen the pain," she said, and Konan didn't say anything, just stared at the girl. The reason why Sakura would do this, for an enemy no less, was because of pity for the pain of her enemy. Perhaps the Akatsuki were all broken on the inside, in pain. She knew that such a thing wouldn't be true, but there had to have been a few. She then knelt down, facing Naruto's back where her hands glowed a soft green, giving a checkup over his body. His skin is hot to the touch, and the cracks just keep growing. If he were to use that form again, he would be cooked alive by his own power. "There's nothing I can do to fully heal him, but I can do this," thought Sakura as she numbed Rya's body. His sharp intakes of breath were quickly disappearing, and his form became more relaxed. Of course she didn't numb it completely where he couldn't move, but just enough where the pain would be more of an annoyance than a curse. When she was done, Naruto got back up onto his own 2 feet and looked over his shoulder to look at Sakura, where he voiced a thank you. Konan then traveled over to Ryuzutsu and hoisted the Anbu agent over her shoulder, and rejoined Naruto where he channeled chakra into his left eye. And a black and purple portal appeared from nowhere. "Until next time," said the Akatsuki agent as Konan walked through. Before Naruto faced the Konoha group, of course since his appearance had changed drastically no one would recognize him. But there was one thing that popped up in Sakura's mind that gave her cause to be shocked. A lightning bolt-like scar over the man's pectoral. But it was Konohamaru that he was looking at, and his strangely powerful and yet familiar chakra. "Kid, I want to fight you in the future. I expect a lot from you," said Naruto as he too walked through the portal where it closed behind him. Okay," said Konohamaru to the empty space. When Naruto and Konan exited the portal, the silver-haired woman found her voice caught in her throat at exactly where she was. All around her, soldiers wearing black armor and black coats practicing with swords and taijutsu before her. Others were training in stealth, bringing death from above to a new degree. Others trained in medical ninjutsu on dummies, while others were going about their own thing, and upon white banners hanging from the ceiling was a black lotus with red petals. "Konan, welcome to the Kakuren headquarters in the Land of Wind." Then all the soldiers turned to face the two of them where they crossed the fists of their heart. "Hail Shogun-sama," said the soldiers as they stared at their leader. Naruto Uzumaki, the founder and leader of the Kakuren. End of chapter 19.